We're live streaming now.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, anō mai, haere mai. Welcome to elected members and staff and youth councillors today for our council meeting. We're in level 3 of our lockdown situation in New Zealand, in the South Island, in Te Tauihu. So our meeting today is being held on Zoom. Just a little reminder around, just for the purpose of today's meeting, if you can keep your microphones on mute and but keep your screens on as much as you can. So I'll run through a little bit more of the protocols as we get into the items. But really like to start today with karakia, and karakia today is kia hora te marina. Kia hora te marina, kia whakapapa punanu te moana. Kia hora hi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou e, tātou katoa, hui e, tai ki e. We say, peace be widespread, may the seas be like greenstone, and looking out my window at the moment, it's certainly very calm. Pathway for us all today, and let us show respect for each other, for one another, and bind us together in the work that we have to undertake on behalf of our city. So welcome to you all, and particularly warm welcome to Will and Chanel. Lovely to have you here as our youth councillors, and welcome to participate in the meeting. As I said just earlier on, we are live streaming the meeting. When we take breaks, it's quite important just to remember to turn off your, go on mute and turn your video off. Because as much as it's entertaining to listen to the conversations that go on while you have your breaks, it's probably just easier if we put that mute on. Robin is managing the Zoom meeting, and Elena's our governance advisor who's taking our minutes today. And if you have any problems with connections, any other technical things, look, please don't hesitate to contact Robin. So if you go down on your participants list, you'll be able to pick up Robin, and you're welcome to send her a chat. Same as the other day, if we're dealing with the substantive matters on the agenda, then we need to speak on the Zoom rather than use the chat, as it just makes for a better public record of our meeting. But technical things, absolutely, please use the chat if you need some assistance. I've received no apologies today. I think we're all here, so lovely to see you all. The order of business, as far as I'm
sorry, Madam Mayor, I was meant to be at the Sustainable Development Goals Conference in Christchurch. It's moved online, so I may need to, well, I will need to step out when I need to speak. So I'll just let the governance advisors know, and I'll turn my video off. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else need, thank you for that reminder, I should have done that, and apologies. Does anyone else need to step out today? I will need to step out for an appointment around about 12:10, and I should be back hopefully shouldn't be too long. No, we're all good. All right, so in terms of the order of business, we are going to run things pretty much as they are here, other than I'm going to hand across to the infrastructure matters for Councillor McGurk to chair, apart from the bylaw matters, when he's going to hand those back to me, and it's because they need to be full council decisions, and we're doing belts and braces today because they're bylaws. If I am not here, they happen to come up when I'm away, then the Deputy Mayor will chair those matters. So any interests that we need to be aware of for today? No, and just a reminder to keep your interest register up to date. Actually, it's a little while, I think, since we've had it sent out. We're probably due, just to, if that's right, I don't want to make extra jobs for the team, but probably in the next couple of weeks, if we could just make sure we do circulate out that interest register to all elected members, just as a just to make sure that we stand across it.
Madam Mayor, I've got a question on that. We still have, I think, at least one elected member that hasn't got anything in their interest register. So hopefully that can be followed up.
Just in terms of today's Zoom, thank you. Just the same as every other Zoom, if you can raise your hand, that'll be really helpful for me, because then we don't have people sort of speaking across each other. So if you could use the raise hand function, if you're not comfortable with using that, can you just like put your hand up, because I'll keep a record on the paper. What the other thing is really helpful for me is that when you put your hand up, you move to the top of my screen, so you're very easy for me to find if you use the electronic version. So we'll just make sure that we try our really best to do that today. Now, the public forum is next up, and hopefully somewhere on the screen I have got Jane Murray, who is coming in to speak on the water supply bylaw. Just looking for Jane. Here she is. Morena, Jane. Really nice to see you. And Jane, just before we get on to your, I know you're here to speak on the water supply bylaw, but I just want to really recognise the incredible work that you and all of your team is doing at the moment, and have been actually doing, sustaining now for well over a year on the COVID response. Look, in terms of both the testing, the immunisation, the fantastic public health messages, and keeping everything else going at the same time. Just absolute thank you so much. So really good to see you here today, but I know that you've got so much else that's going on in your world. Welcome. So really happy to hand over to you for your to speak to the water supply bylaw when you're ready. Jane, I'll just get you to unmute and then we should be okay.
Thank you for your kind words, and I'll be sure to pass those on to my colleagues. I just want to take a few minutes of your time to say that we strongly support this water supply bylaw and the water source protection zones. We'd like to reiterate the findings of the Havelock North drinking water inquiry, and also looking at the New Zealand drinking water safety plan framework, where principle 2 states that protection of source water is of paramount importance. The protection of the source of drinking water provides the first and sometimes the most significant barrier against drinking water contamination and illness. And the purpose of the Water Services Bill on the subpart on source water also is to look at the risks and hazards to source water that are identified, assessed, managed and monitored by drinking water suppliers and the local authorities. So the benefit of having good raw water quality prior to treatment, it minimises the consequences if treatment failure occurs, and it does occur. There have been a number of contamination events in New Zealand. These include in 2012, the Campylobacter outbreak in Darfield, which affected, we had 29 confirmed cases and 109 probable cases when the chlorine treatment was inadvertently not occurring during use of backup. There was also another Campylobacter outbreak in Ashburton in 1996, where there was a chlorination failure, which caused 19 confirmed cases and 33 probable. And at Te Atau College in Hawke's Bay in 2001, due to malfunctioning UV treatment system, and that's 137 confirmed cases. We know that there's pressure on the council to allow increased use of the Rodding and Matai river catchments, but in addition to the proposed bylaw, we strongly encourage council to consider what its line in the sand is when in respect to future development. Each proposed development on its own may not tangibly affect source water quality, but the cumulative effects of and the precedent set by each increment of development may lead to deterioration that cannot subsequently be reversed. So therefore, the protection of the sources of human drinking water is critical. And while we support the proposed bylaw, we encourage council to consider the bylaw as the minimum standard if and when considering future catchment development proposals. Thank you for your time.
Jane, thank you very much for speaking to your submission. I'll open for questions. Councillor Sansom.
Thank you. Kia ora, Jane. Thanks very much for your presentation. I really appreciate that. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but council undertakes commercial clearfell forestry in the Roding and Maitai valleys above the water catchments. And I was just wondering if you have a view on that and the impact that that might have on the quality of our source water.
Thank you for your question. I was to present with a health protection officer, Evan McKenzie, who is our drinking water assessor, and he would be an expert to answer this question. However, he is involved in the COVID response. We're still supporting Auckland at the moment, so I'm not really in a position to answer that question. I guess just drawing on those comments, any aspect of development or any time humans are encroaching on another area, including forestry, putting in mountain bike tracks, walking, whatever it is, there will be an effect of some degree. And it's just, I guess from our perspective, it's the council being able to monitor and assess and having a look, constantly checking the quality of the water in the area for any type of activity, because all activity will have an effect.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Jane, for your submission. Jane, this is sort of preparing us, isn't it? I just want to get it clear in my mind for the goal of a national environment standard for our drinking water. Is that correct?
There is already a national standard on drinking water, and there's the NES on the freshwater management. So it's and then you'll have the water services bill, and there's the proposed changes to the RMA. So it's constantly being tweaked and reviewed, but all in the direction of protecting the environment, including the freshwater, as much as possible.
Are you communicating with Tasman as well over this? You're presenting to them also?
They haven't put out that I'm aware of a water supply bylaw. But we are communicating with Tasman.
I asked that question because I have a memory of us trying to align our water supply bylaw with Tasman's, you see. That's why I asked the question.
Sorry, I'm not aware of it. I may have slipped. Sorry, my head has been COVID.
Yes, thank you, Jane. That's right. We can follow that up with answers.
No worries. Thank you for that.
No other questions. Jane, thank you very much for taking the time. It's a really busy time for you. And again, please take care of you. I know you're working incredibly long hours, and make sure you get some breaks. But thank you for taking some time to come and see us today.
Thank you for your time. See you later. Bye.
All right, there's no one else in public forum today, as far as I'm aware. So we'll move on to the Mayor's report. And I just want to just make a few comments today, just in relation to COVID-19 and how our community is responding and also managing. I just made those comments to Jane about the incredible work that she's doing with her team. And I'm really proud of this community and the way that everyone is responding to the emergency. But I just want to reflect on I had a Project Kokiri steering group meeting yesterday, and there were a few things that were discussed. And one was actually around resilience and the impact of COVID this time. It's fair to say that the reserves, the human reserves, have been really stretched. We can see that people are tired. There is, we've really got to keep motivated and positive about getting through this period. And I know that there is a lot of pressure, particularly on some of our businesses that are unable to operate during COVID, level 4, and many who have had bookings cancelled, supply chain issues. And I just really want to acknowledge the pressure and the stress for all of those people. But I also want to just take a moment to actually just to reflect on a really good piece of writing that I came across this week, and some of you may have read that as well, and that was Jihan Casanada's opinion piece, and I'm just going to read a little bit from it. And he wrote in a piece, I think, that really resonated with me. He said, during the lockdown, there's a reassuring quote has been doing the rounds, and you'll have seen it. It's, "You're not working from home. You're at home during a crisis trying to work." And it's a nice sentiment, but why haven't we extended the same grace and goodwill to those who are in charge? Politicians and public servants are at work during a crisis, trying to protect 5 million people from a mutating virus that spreads through the air. How are they rewarded for their trouble? Our COVID response relies on thousands of people across the public sector, including the workers often derided as bureaucrats. If you expect the government to do anything, a human has to do it. Paying out subsidies, running helplines, ordering nasal swabs, updating the COVID website, collating complex data on active cases. A few days ago, when the Ministry of Health's 1 p.m. email failed to appear on time, people on Twitter were tapping their watches, rolling their eyes, and even suggesting that officials were operating on public service time. Were those officials sitting around eating Cameo creams, or were they desperately trying to verify crucial information before releasing it to the public? For 17 months, many government workers have been under sustained psychological pressure, working punishing hours while trying to meet the expectations of a fickle public. Those people are not robots. Even during an outbreak, they have to eat, sleep, go to the toilet, and homeschool their kids. And I'm sure many lie awake scrolling through the social media, reading vitriolic posts about their decision-making and their character. The reason we got this far is because hundreds of people have sacrificed their own well-being in order to design and execute the COVID response. And that's because they care about their work. Yes, ministers and public servants must be held accountable for their failings and decisions. But every time we slag them off, every time we tell them how useless they are, we trash their contribution and make a mockery of our own proclamations about the importance of mental health. And I'm going to extend that to when I think about who is responding. So that's a real shout out to all of the public servants. And I'm going to put in that I'm going to include all of the people in our organisation, Tasman's organisation, who are working to support the COVID response. These are really hard-working people who just keep on getting up every day, making things happen, keeping us safe. The services are being delivered, and I just want to really acknowledge how important that is and focus us back on making sure that actually we deliver messages as community leaders that actually support those who are doing the mahi. I am really impressed with the cohesion and across the region, and on yesterday's project Corkery steering group meeting, looking at the leaders of the lead agencies and having those conversations, we are all aware of both how hard people are working, but also that the pressure that we're working under. And for those, particularly for many of our government agencies, for the leaders in those government agencies, that 17 months has been constant. I had was meeting with one of the Deputy Secretaries of Treasury, and he described what his life is like, is that he is one of the team that are involved in, the COVID immediate COVID responses with Cabinet, and so his phone is always always on, and always every time there has been a COVID case, he gets an alert all the way through those 17 months. And I just want to do a shout out and say thank you. We could be living in all sorts of parts of the world where the COVID response has challenged governments to the point that they've really been unable to sustain their communities. In our case, we're in a country where, yes, there are going to be days where we think, gosh, that decision should have been different, but I'm just really grateful there are people there making those decisions and doing a really good job for the community. So huge thank you to all of those people, and to those of you on the screen who I can see, please pass that message back to your teams within council. We are really, really grateful. Look, other thing I just wanted to cover off today is a message just around, one of the messages in the region at the moment is around the challenge that people are having with food security, and the demand has been immense when it comes to food parcels. All of our food banks, all of our agencies, our iwi agencies have been very, very busy delivering out food to support our community. I know that is a message that is being relayed up to government, and we are making sure that we're getting the resources that we need into this region to continue that support so that people have the food that they need. I don't think it is going to get easier for a while. If you've been doing the grocery shopping lately, you'll have been noting how expensive some things are, and that is a factor partly of the supply chain disruption, and so it is a hard ask at the moment to actually have the cash to pay for the groceries for many families in our region, so we're really looking after that. The last thing I'm going to say is that some businesses have managed to open. So level 3 there have been able to open in part, and we know that our hospitality sector, our visitor sector has been really impacted again. So a big shout out to our community to say, let's get out and support those businesses that have been able to open. There are some great opportunities throughout the city at the moment to connect with some of your favourite places. So all the support that we can give to local business at the moment will be really, really gratefully received. So that's my Mayor's report today. I'm not taking questions on the Mayor's report today because I just want to leave that message here. And we'll move on now to handing over to Councillor McGurk, who is going to take the rest of the meeting through to you get to the bylaws. So Councillor McGurk, you're in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, next item on the agenda is my chairperson's report for the Infrastructure Committee, taken as read, pages 9 and 10 on your agenda. The two aspects I really want to talk about is that I attended the Nelson Marlborough Contractor Awards, and 3 projects that the council had awarded to contractors were recognised as exemplars by the industry. They're listed there: the Pullman Stream, the Seafield Road Rock Revetment, and the Health and Safety Award, which included the Maitai to Anzac Walkway. So the projects we're putting out are recognised by the industry as exemplars. More particularly as the end of year outcome, you would see that we're close to our $40 million a year budget, which was always ambitious. I really want to acknowledge the infrastructure team under Mr. Libertis and his managers of the outstanding results that have been achieved. We've actually sort of achieved pretty much close to that expend as the highest amount we've ever spent in the year, and under somewhat trying circumstances in terms of increased costs, supply line issues, and the COVID restrictions. So I really want to publicly acknowledge the ambitious program which was delivered by an outstanding team on the infrastructure. So thank you very much, and I'm quite happy to take any questions. Yeah, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, very much for your report. And it was great to see the recognition at the conference that you attended. I have a question in relation to the Pullman Stream shared pathway. That must be very, very close to opening, and I'm just wondering, for public use, and I'm just wondering when that is likely to happen.
I'll defer that question to Mr. Libertis. Are you able to tell us when that project is likely to finish?
Through the chair, yes, as you know, that project is literally 5 minutes from where I live, and I'm very, very keen to use it because it's going to be my shortcut to Countdown. I did take a sneaky walk with my dogs past it yesterday, and there is one bit of fencing that hasn't been installed, and it was an issue of material delivery pre-COVID. And I still think that is an issue, and until such time that we get that last bit of fencing in, it will unfortunately be some way since when we can open it. As you know, our contractors are back on site recently, and we will be pushing them to fix that last bit. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get that last piece of fencing that we can install. But I need to find out exactly when. But I can't imagine us being more than 2 or 3 weeks off through the chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Libertis.
It's looking excellent. I was there too very recently, not with dogs, but with someone, and would love to walk through it. But as for that, say for that one piece of fencing, it is near complete, isn't it? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Brian. A question for Alec. Alec, what exactly was it that you did on your walk to countdown that made it sneaky?
Oh no! Don't through the chair look anything into the sneaky comment. All I did was walk through the path and to ascertain the extent. And people have been using it. That was the point, and I just wanted to make sure that it was safe.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Thanks. There are no other questions. I'll move that the Chair's report be received. Someone to second. Thanks, Councillor Edgar. Those in favour will say aye, or thumbs up. Anyone against? Carried. Thanks very much. Next item on the agenda is the Transport Activity Management Plan. I'd like to invite Mrs. Parfitt to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morena, councillors. This report is brought to you today really just to close out an administrative process by which the Transport Activity Management Plan must be adopted. The report does refer to the Infrastructure Committee doing that and making a recommendation to Council, but in these COVID times, of course, the report is now coming directly to you as full Council seeking that approval. There have been a number of minor typographical and errors in the TAMP, or the Transport Activity Management Plan, brought to my attention, and I apologise for those. I understand that a resolution has been drafted to allow for a delegation so that a full correction following a thorough proofread can take place. In this report, you just have the executive summary attached. The full AMP is 400 pages long, and a link has been up on the website. And in fact, a full printed copy was due to be placed in the councillors' lounge the day we went into lockdown. But all of the changes that have been made since you saw this last August are highlighted in yellow. The main budget changes which have been made and are reflected in the long-term plan are that public transport improvements that were scheduled initially for year 6 have been brought into year 3. So that's now in the LTP and the RLTP. The other changes are listed as in the report, which I'll take as read, and they just reflect the development of the AMP as information has come to hand or been updated, such as crash statistics. If there are any questions.
Right, questions. Councillor Edgar.
Oh, yeah, just a quick minor question, thank you. At what point would we anticipate to hear from Waka Kotahi in regards to funding for the public transport expansions in year 3? Do we have to wait till year 2, or, you know, I'm just aware there's a lot of planning basically from now through to year 3 of planning to gear us up for that year 3 step change in public transport. Just wondering when we would get some, you know, surety from Waka Kotahi around funding.
Thank you, Councillor Edgar. That's a very good question. We haven't been fully informed about the National Land Transport funding decisions or allocations as yet, but we have heard some, and that is things like the continuous programs, but we have yet to hear about our improvement program, and public transport is part of that. We expect to hear by the end of next week. So I understand it went to the Waka Kotahi board on the 31st of August and will be released within the next 7 days. Now, you'll be aware that they've signalled that the NLTF, or the National Land Transport Fund, is quite financially constrained, and it's probable that some of our forward works program may need to change. but we will bring you that information at a later date. We can move stuff around within the transport budget from being subsidised activity to unsubsidised activity, and that's a process that we will go through and bring to probably the Infrastructure Committee, possibly the Regional Transport Committee later in the year when we've got more certainty. But we should get an early indication about that public transport funding next week.
Thank you very much. And I know staff have done some amazing work. So I think we've got a really good sales pitch for Waka Kotahi on the benefits. And I think it's been great that it's been a combined effort with Tasman, and that we've been very much 50-50 partnership in advocating for this. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Laurie, you're next.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Marg. Great news about the public funding, the funding for public transport coming forward. In layperson's terms, what noticeable difference will that make to people's experience of public transport?
Well, the Regional Public Transport Plan is a large document and it's been consulted on, and we heard largely from our community, we heard strongly from our community that they wanted us to make our plan changes sooner and faster, and that was across Nelson and Tasman. There's the introduction of some new services for the outlying Tasman areas. For us, it was increased frequency and increased hours, so more of a 7 day a week, 7 to 7, we call it, and it's conceptual, but a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. timetable, 7 days a week. So that would be a noticeable change. It's an increase on frequency, particularly at the weekends. So it's all in our RPTP, or our Regional Public Transport Plan, and what we did was we responded to the community's call to bring those improvements forward. They were originally scheduled for year 6 and they wanted them brought into year 3 of the LTP. So that's when we go live with a new contract.
Great, thank you very much for that. Another question through the chair, just quickly. On page 20, it talks about railway reserve improvements, including lighting and upgrade of Songa Street Railway Reserve intersection. How much lighting are we talking about there?
So that's a business case that we are reviewing, through the chair, forgot that on Zoom, through the chair. So we are progressing that business case about lighting the railway reserve. And that's a question that we can't yet answer. So as part of our business case, we need to look at what the costs are, what the feasibility or the deliverability of this is. So I can't answer that at this stage.
Okay, can I just ask this through the chair? How much of the railway reserve is being considered for lighting as part of this process?
Through the chair, again, sections of it, but it will depend on the type of lighting that we use, because that will govern costs. It may not be the section between the top of St Vincent Street and Scotia Street. It might be busier sections and intersections along the railway reserve. Again, the detail will be in the business case where we consider all of those options.
Thanks, look forward to it.
All right, we've got Councillor Sanson.
Thanks very much, Brian. Kia ora, Marg. Just a follow-up question from Councillor Laurie's. Is there a time frame around when that business case might be coming to council on the lighting of Railway Reserve?
Through the chair, it's in the work program for this year to refresh it. We don't usually bring business cases as such to council, but we would include some discussion or commentary around it probably through our quarterly report to the Infrastructure Committee. We will keep you updated when we've got something to tell you.
Thanks. And so is that this financial year or this calendar year?
Be this financial year. Won't be this side of Christmas. I can tell you that. The workload is too great at the moment.
Okay, thanks.
No other questions from any of the councillors? Okay, thanks, Mrs. Parfitt. I've got someone to move that could you put up the screen save the amendment so that it's got the amendments there so we know what we're voting on. So thanks, Robin. So it's been moved by Councillor Edgar, someone to second, Councillor Neil Stevens. Any debate or discussion? There being none, I'll put it. Those in favour put their thumbs up or say aye. Anyone against? Carried. Thanks very much. Next item on the agenda is the solid waste activity management plan. Back to you, Mrs. Parfitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this report is about the acceptance of the Solid Waste Activity Management Plan, or SWAMP, as I'll refer to it by. In the report, it refers to the Infrastructure Committee, but in our case today, full council. It's just that final step in the process. So the draft SWAMP was brought to you in September last year, and it really has no material changes to it as a result of the long-term plan deliberations. There is one graph that was updated regarding growth projections, but this didn't materially change the planned work for the program. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Opportunity to ask any questions to the officer. Councillor Noonan, and then Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry, haven't talked for a while to anybody. Your voice sort of goes. Look, I'm just raising the issue of the recycling bins again, because I'm looking at page 27 and there's a budget there, 27 of the actual plan in the attachment. Sorry, I'm trying to work with some pieces of paper. I hope that makes sense. There was a budget line. There's a budget of physical assets under the management of solid waste is the title, and the page number is 27. We've got budgets in there for recycling bins, and I know that they're 5 to 7 years out potentially, but I'm going to raise again the fact that we actually, ratepayers paid for their own recycling bins. They would charge $10 a year for every year, and started some years ago. So I don't know why council is putting a budget in to buy recycling bins. What are we going to do about all the people that have paid for theirs already, or are paying, still paying?
Through the chair, I think it's a line item. It's way out in year 7. I mean, those bins have a life. Some will last longer than others. It's in there as, I presume, a placeholder, because even though they've paid for those bins, some of them will wear out and they'll need to buy a new bin, or council will need to buy a new bin. And through the activity management plan, the cost of that gets passed on through council. I'm not quite sure about the history of that, to be perfectly honest, Councillor Noonan, but it is in there as a placeholder should we need to be buying a large stock of recycling bins. And I will say that whole curbside recycling might look quite different in 7 years' time. Once product stewardship and things are brought in, we may not need as big a bins. It could change. So at this stage, it's a placeholder out in year 7.
Okay, but look, we're looking at purchasing 23,000. I mean, mine's like brand new. I don't know how long ago we got them, probably 5-6 years ago. There's nothing wrong with a lot of them. A heavy plastic, I just think of the environment and producing all these bins, and unless they're actually, I haven't seen any destroyed. I just want to raise it as a we need to have a look at that, because if there's a change in policy and some people have already paid, if you're saying that we're going to be buying them and selling them on, then we probably don't even need it in there, because it's a coming in and coming out. So I just wanted to raise that, because if we've changed the policy, which I don't know that we have, it's some of the other councillors that were on council at the time that this was quite a major issue at the time. Maybe someone else can do, but how are we going to deal with it? Are you going to revisit this again, given it's 5 to 7 years out? But I will keep raising it as long as I sit at this table. I will be raising this, because I just think there's an inequity problem.
Well, you've raised it. You've had the answer. It's a line item for year 7. Okay, Councillor Edgar. Then I got Will, and then Councillor Courtney and Her Worship.
Thank you. Just on page 42, comment number 5, it talks about the kitchen waste I just wondered if we needed to clarify that we normally clarify every other time we mention the kitchen waste is that it's, subject to the successful trial. I was just wondering if they should be words that should be added.
Yes, certainly we can add those in. You're correct, it is subject to a successful trial. I will say this, the trial is looking very, very good at the moment, but yes, we can add those words in under that clause about minor amendments.
Yes, I saw that in the quarterly report, which is very exciting. And the other one is also in the quarterly report, it mentioned the battery facility. And I just wondered if there needed to be any adjustment in year one for that, or is that being fully funded by NTRLBU, or are only the other costs to NCC only minor and wouldn't require any amendment to the swamp?
Thank you, Councillor Edgar. Through the chair, it's the latter. So it's jointly funded through the regional landfill unit, which are buying the boxes to collect and store the batteries in. And the council component of that is the publicity and management of that, which is being paid for out of our existing waste minimisation budget. No changes required.
Lovely, thank you very much.
All right, thanks. Will?
Thank you. Through the chair, just could someone please clarify for me? I just listened to Councillor Noonan's comment before around the purchase of new waste bins. When is that scheduled for? I don't think I caught that quite, because I'm just wondering, because I guess currently, at least I personally don't see a problem with our waste collection bins that most people have, but if that's for the future, then I understand that.
Thank you. Well, through the chair, so just for clarification, we're talking about recycling bins. So council does not collect waste or refuse, rubbish at Curbside. So we're talking about the recycling bins, and it is a placeholder in years 5 to 7 at the moment. But as I signalled earlier, that whole collection might look quite different going forward if the central government bring in product stewardship and people no longer put glass out because it's a value and they might decide to donate it to a school as a fundraising activity, or same with plastic. So we might need smaller bins. And just coming back to a comment Councillor Noonan made, if the bins are in very good condition, then we certainly wouldn't be throwing them away. We would find other use, or if we retain the same type of bin and the same process for curbside collection of those bins. If a bin is in good condition, we probably wouldn't replace it. So that's, it's a piece of work that will need some thought at the time, but it is some way out.
That's fantastic. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Courtney. Then we've got Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Officer Mark. Mark, one of the biggest contributors to landfill, waste to landfill, is builders and construction materials being taken there. How are we progressing our plans to repurpose some of that building waste from contractors to the landfill?
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. That's a very good question. Thank you. Through the chair, we have started some work on construction and demolition, and you'll be aware that the Mediterranean Foods Warehouse was a case study, a council-owned building that was very much deconstructed as opposed to being demolished, and a lot of that stuff didn't go to landfill. It was successfully diverted. We have at the moment, through the central government's Ministry for the Environment Waste Minimisation Fund, we put up an expression of interest to ramp up our construction and demolition diversion. Our expression of interest was accepted, and we have just in the recent weeks submitted an RFI, a request for information, more information about what that might look like. And if we're successful, then we will be gaining funding for a larger scale storage, building of bunkers to take deconstruction material for secondary markets. And we'll be working with the likes of Habitat for Humanity, the Restore, about finding secondary markets for that. So it's definitely a focus area for the solid waste activity management plan. And in fact, there might be more of that happening pending the outcome of the Ministry of the Environment Waste Minimisation funding decisions.
Thank you so much, Marg. That's excellent news. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks. Next, I've got Councillor Fulton, then Councillor Sanson, then Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I've just got a couple of questions regarding climate change and emissions reduction, Marg. I just can't find the section, I guess because our landfill is such a high producer of greenhouse gas emissions, I would have expected maybe to have seen the figure showing that, the CMARS figure, showing how much emissions we do contribute through landfill and sort of what our targets are, particularly around the food waste, if that goes ahead. Can you point me to the page number? It's a massive document and I can't find that in detail. Is it that it's not there, or is it that I've missed it?
Through the Chair, this activity management plan relates to the Nelson City Council activities within the solid waste business unit. That it's not the regional landfill business unit's activity management plan. So I think you'll probably find it in there.
So it will be in there. So how do we link the two together then? So in terms of, just so I understand fully, in terms of sort of that food waste piece of work, in terms of diverting food waste from landfill, which is one of the best ways we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions at landfill, how do those two link together in terms of the conversation happening here?
Through the Chair, I can't speak for the business unit, the joint business unit, and Mr. Levertus may be able to, but what I will say is this activity management plan takes things up to the gate of the landfill, and we go back to the solid waste, the joint waste minimisation plan that had a target of 10% reduction per person to landfill by 2030. The food waste, the curbside food collection trial will significantly reduce the amount of organic waste going into landfill. So we're talking about what happens on this side of the weighbridge at the landfill, and we're contributing to that, but the measures of carbon emissions from the landfill sit outside of this document.
Okay, actually, I've just found it. It's page 74. Thank you. I've found the section. So great, it's in there. I guess I just think having that figure would have been really helpful in terms of showing what we're targeting to achieve in terms of emissions reduction through that scheme if it goes ahead over the next 10 years. It does say it says 9,000 tonnes of CO2 diversion of this would achieve 75% reduction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. Councillor Sanson, then Councillor Laurie.
Thanks very much, Brian, through you. Kia ora, Marg, thanks for that. My question is a follow-up from Councillor Courtney's, and it's really great to hear that there's movement happening on the diversion of building and construction waste from landfill. I'm just wondering if when you come to doing work on this, it will be possible to loop in the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum. One of the things that's been looked at in the region is the potential for waste untreated timbers that are not suitable for reuse to be diverted to kind of industrial scale biochar. And so it's just another thing to keep in the mix with the groups that you're talking to. Is that possible?
We have ongoing discussions with the Climate Change Forum, both in the transport space and the solid waste space. So they're definitely a partner.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Matt, Councillor Laurie, your turn.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks again, Marg. Just thinking about what goes in our rubbish bags, and like at least half of it is soft plastic. And I think soft plastic recycling is problematic, but given the enthusiasm with which particularly food manufacturers continue to use it, I just wonder if there is a future for soft plastic recycling in the Nelson region, and what your thoughts were on that, Marg.
Through the Chair, yes, I think there is, but it's not managed by us. It was initially managed, you might recall, the soft plastic collections at supermarkets, which was completely overwhelmed. They just couldn't cope with the quantities that they got, so they pulled back. And as the the group that's managing that, and its name escapes me at the moment, I'm sorry, as they have the capacity to roll those out again, there will be plans to do so. And I'm just thinking, we are regularly in touch with the soft plastic scheme, the packaging forum, that's right, thank you, Ms. Lee. The packaging forum manage that, and we are regularly in contact with them. So it may come, but it will only come when they have the capacity to manage it.
So through the chair at this stage, there's no indication that soft plastic recycling may be returning to Nelson Whakatū?
It's currently only operating in Christchurch and in the North Island, but I think it will come here. I just can't say when.
Okay, thank you.
Just to try to be helpful, is that as it's rolling out in a stage approach across the North Island, I think Hawke's Bay came online about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but there are sections of the North Island that are still outside the scheme, and I think there's only one manufacturing plant, which I think is in South Auckland. And there may be another one. And it escapes me where it is. I have a vague idea it might be around Palmerston North.
So, Mr. Chair, they are aware that we would like them to come here, and they are constantly reviewing it.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions? There's been I'll put up the recommendations. There's been an initial recommendation suggested that the as chair of the group manager infrastructure be delegated to approve any minor amendments. So if Robin, so that's the recommendation. So I'm looking for someone to move. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Edgar. Someone to second. Thanks, Councillor Courtney. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Fulton.
Sorry, Brian, I had one more question actually. On page 76 of the asset management plan, it talks about potential processing methods for kitchen waste. And when we went out to the community and consulted, we very much talked about creating living soil in terms of creating that circular economy so that you can then grow food back in the food waste that you've turned into compost. I'm just curious why that's been changed in terms of looking at a whole lot of other options which potentially don't have a really viable end product, because that conversation didn't take place at a governance level.
So you're looking at page 76?
Yeah.
This is the draft asset management plan.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, would you like me to respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So through the chair, I think the trial will guide how the organic waste that is collected will be processed. And I think the term compost was used in a very conceptual, generic kind of way. But there may be other options that still divert that from landfill and are affordable and deliverable. But our trial will provide us with the information to make those decisions. We will be bringing back to committee and council the way forward. So there will be the opportunity to have that discussion then.
Okay, but it wasn't a generic, or it was a very intentional word at a governance level. So that was worded very carefully in the long-term plan consultation document, because that's what the community has asked for. And that certainly is the intention of diverting food waste, is that you create a living soil as a product afterwards. So I understand there's other options, but really we should have had that conversation before. And I am a little concerned that the community thinks that, so the community was consulted on diverting food waste to create compost, to create living soil. And that's a really key part of that circular economy thinking. So I don't know whether, Brian, you might be able to look at a minor amendment around that. It might just need a little bit of a tweak to to say that that's
Okay.
part of. So it's a little bit like deconstruction, where you're trying to ensure that when you deconstruct a building, that it's reused for another building or another purpose. It's a really important part of thinking about diversion of food waste.
Okay, well, I can have a look at it with the officers.
Great, thank you.
Right. Any other discussion or debate? Okay, I'm ready to put it. Those in favour, thumbs up. Great. Anyone against?
Excuse me, Brian. I
Yep.
had my hand up to speak.
Oh, rightio. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just for that amendment, I don't know if officers can comment. So did we specifically, just before we suggest an amendment to the final swamp, is that the words that we put in our LTP columns? I just want to make sure, we're being consistent, and I'm happy either way. I just don't know what we did put in our LTP consultation document off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And if Councillor Fulton's correct, then that's fantastic. Then we, need to just be clear. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the wording in page 76. It does talk about open to any processing material, not only composting. The criteria for evaluation, environmental, social, cultural benefits, as well as compliance with national and international standards and regulations. So it does talk about some additional possible methods beyond composting in the generic term.
Okay, I'm probably happy for, when it comes back in our report to discuss it further. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGirt. I'm just actually looking at the consultation document now, because I was doing the same thing, going, what does it actually say? And yes, it does talk about a plan for collection of kitchen waste at the curbside for composting if our current trial is successful. So I think Councillor Fulton's raising quite an important point. And it was also, this was part of, almost loads to go here. This is part of Council's commitment to supporting Nelson as a good food city and aiming to reduce waste to landfill by 10% per capita by 2030. So I think that's a very valid point to raise. I'm not just sure how you're going to deal with that today, though. Are you happy that you've got what you need?
Yeah, we've got LTP. I'll have a look at the wording in what else is in the draft swamp, because I'm only looking at page 76. But I can have a look at that with the officers. Councillor Sanson.
Thank you, Brian. I'm just wanting to understand, is the concern that it could still be that the collected food waste could be landfilled?
Well, I'm looking at the wording. This hasn't come up before. I'm just looking at what the wording says in page 76. It does talk about not only composting. So the inference from that is that it is composted, but there is other options there that have been looked at in terms of processing the kitchen waste, none of which include landfill.
Okay, thanks. I think we need to make sure that this is an AMP for 10 years, and I think we need to make sure that we're not closing ourselves off to options. There's lots of movement in this space, and I agree that with Councillor Fulton that composting food waste is probably at the moment primarily beneficial, but I also think that this is, there's lots of change in this space, technological development. So I think we need to be careful we don't shut ourselves off to anything.
Well, bearing in mind we've already passed the resolution. So Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Brian. Look, I'm just checking, you made a comment just a few moments ago that you said that you would talk with the officers, and I just wanted to clarify as to what you're going to talk about. I just wanted to be clear in my mind.
Well, it's the wording in the words of composting, and so it's consistent with what we've put out for the LTP.
Okay.
Now the resolution that we've passed is actually a minor amendment. So if it's anything beyond a minor amendment, it's going to have to come back
Okay. Okay, thanks for that clarification. I just wanted to check. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Councillor Folden.
Goodness me, I just muted myself. Thank you. Look, just to clarify, so the word composting was picked quite deliberately. Rachel, you're right. There are lots of other technologies coming into consideration, but in terms of the good food cities and sort of the commitment to food resiliency, it's quite important that the end product is used to grow food in again. So that was part of the thinking of that circular economy. There's been some quite significant investment in composting facilities up in the North Island, I think, which had a lot of community opposition to them because the end product wasn't useful. So that was partly why there's this compost movement in terms of ensuring that we have a viable end product. I don't think plasma incinerators produce a viable end product. So that's what I'm kind of flagging, that concern. I'm sure that, Brian, you can perhaps come back to me with just a slight change. I think it's okay to look at other options, but I do think we went out to the community consulting on turning food waste into compost, and that's a big part of the Good Food Cities objectives as well, which was part of that consultation.
Okay. Right, I can have a look at that with the GM infrastructure and the manager of the solid waste.
Thanks, Brian. I did raise it during the long-term plan deliberations and before the consultation document went out to clarify that was the intention of the end product. I understand that solid waste is just concerned with getting the waste out of landfill, but what we do with the end product is really important to the community as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we actually have passed the resolution. So it's been the report's been received, agree to minor delegated minor amendments that's required, and that we adopt the solid waste activity management plan. So that's been passed. I didn't hear anyone vote against it. No, that's right. Right, it's now 10:05. We're right on schedule for a break. So we'll take a 10-minute break, come back at 10:15. How you going, Robin? Is everyone coming back?
Yes, they are. We're live streaming now.
Right. Okay, back live streaming. Welcome back, councillors, after a short break. Very important we take a break while I have our Zoom meetings and have a bit of a stretch. Next item on the agenda is the Water Supply Bylaw Deliberations Report. Now, as this is a bylaw matter, which is a specific delegation to reserve to council, I'll hand back the meeting to Her Worship the Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. We're on page 44 of the agenda and invite the officer to introduce this report. And I can see Mr. Light David's on screen. I'm thinking it might be David, or is it somebody else? I'm going to guess it's David. If it's not David, you'll let me know. Kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora. I'll be asking Phil Ruffle to present this report.
Oh, kia ora, Phil. My apologies. I just couldn't scroll through my screens fast enough. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report sets out the proposal for us to adopt a new water supply bylaw to replace our existing bylaw. Our current bylaw lapses in December of this year, and in terms of operating our network effectively and efficiently, we need some form of regulatory controls, and this bylaw is proposed to be its replacement. It's had quite a long gestation. We started some of this work last year. We had meetings at the beginning of this year. We've been out to public consultation and we've received submissions on the bylaw. I've tried to set those submissions out as clearly and as fully as I can in this report. I think really in the interests of moving the report along, I'd prefer to take the report as read, and I'm more than happy just simply to respond to questions.
Thank you, Phil. I'm happy to manage it that way. So just in terms of process, just so I'm clear, we've gone out, we've received the submissions, we've had the hearings, we're now at the deliberations, and so we are now responding today to those submissions. You've given us the views in the report, and to finally move through to adoption stage. So we're going to do that, and that's today's activity. So I'll open for questions, and I have Councillor Sanson followed by Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, through you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora, Phil. Thanks very much for this. I've got a couple of questions, maybe four, on different topics. I can ask them all together. I can just go through one by one. Maybe it might be simplest. So I understand that the intention of the bylaw is to, I think I understand that the intention of the bylaw is to allow motorbiking to continue over the Mongatapu track, but when I was reading it, it just seems a little bit contradictory between 8.3, I think it's 9, and 8.2, the update to 8.2 around that. And I was just wondering whether you can speak to that and clarify what the intention is in regards to motorbikes on the Mongatapu.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, clause 8.2 of the bylaw sets out those activities that council permits without any particular controls in the water source catchments. And four-wheel drive vehicles and motorcycles access across the Mongatapu are permitted. The difference comes in the clause 8.3, where four-wheel drive vehicles will require a permit to enter the Mongatapu track, and they will require the payment of a $100 bond, which is essentially a good performance bond. Our caretaker has numerous examples of four-wheel drive vehicles coming to grief on the track and having to help them out. But motorcycles are permitted to use the Mongatapu track without a permit. Of course, unless they're part of an organised motorsport activity.
Thanks very much, Phil. So just following up on that, so then like for example, a group, a tour group or something that were coming over, say from the North Island through to Nelson, would that be seen as an organised motorsport activity, or are they still permissible without a permit and payment?
Thanks, Phil.
Madam Mayor, yes, there's no payment requested for the organised motorsport events. So in that particular example, if you had 3 or 4 motorcyclists travelling as a group wishing to use the Mongatapu, then yes, we would like to know that they're going as a group. The motorcycles won't be the only people on that particular track, but there'll be no payment requested for that motorcycle group to go. And the permit is really just to provide an alert to our caretaker that there will be a more than usual number of people on the track.
And that permit system, is it pretty straightforward, an online system where people can just apply? I'm asking because it is a fairly popular route for groups of adventure motorbike riders, and so there is some concern that this might impact that.
Yes, at the moment the permit systems just simply run through our customer services offices, so they can do it pretty seamlessly, and really at the moment council just seeks to know who's going onto the Mongatapu track and when, just to alert the caretaker.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks for clarifying that. My next question is on dog walking. Now, I know in the past, obviously,
before you come to that one, sorry to interrupt you, because I'm just going to take them one at a time, but I just want to come back in terms of process. So, Phil, do we have submissions on the points that Councillor Sansom was raising in the bylaw? Are there any particular submissions that we need to be mindful of?
Madam Mayor, there was a submission from the Nelson Tasman Cycles Trust that did say that we should make sure that the existing activities that are carried out inside the catchment should be allowed to continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right, that's right. Thank you, Councillor Sense. We'll do the next question now.
Thanks. The next question is in relation to dog walking. So I'm aware that in the past, whilst there's kind of a no, you can't walk your dogs in those areas, I'm aware that in the past you could get a permit to do that. And so I'm just wondering, with this new bylaw, does that mean that permit option is no longer available? So is it just going to be kind of a blanket, no more dogs in the water catchment? So, including hunting dogs and that kind of thing?
Madam Mayor, thank you. No, there is no prohibition for dogs under this bylaw. If you want to take a dog up into there, we just simply ask that you get a permit for that.
That's fantastic. So the permit option is still available?
Madam Mayor, yes it is.
Okay, that's great, thanks. So I had a question around the amendment to the wording of clause 8.21 to read walking, jogging on council approved tracks, and just wondering if you can speak to what council approved tracks are. How is that defined? What is the meaning of that, or the definition?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, if we go to our website, really is the best possible place to find that, and we put on our parks and reserves layers, and we show the track layouts that exist throughout both the Maitai and the road encatchments. And we have those tracks which are preferred for mountain bikes, and we have those that are for both walkers and shared mountain bikes, and there is actually a public road in through there. So what we're finding, of course, is that people have been taking chainsaws into those areas and creating their own little tracks. So we've tried to say council approved tracks to avoid this little ad hoc construction of tracks in the area.
Thanks, Phil. That's really helpful. So then the intention is not to reduce the number of existing, I guess, let's say, kind of approved tracks. It's not going to be looking at what the current approved tracks are and then reducing them down to ones that are just approved for the bylaw. It's just kind of the existing approved tracks. Is that the intention? Rather than any that might be rogue tracks or. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, yes, we see the existing track network as quite a vibrant and important part of those catchments, and there is no intention on our part to try and close off those existing tracks, council approved tracks.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Questions, Councillor
Yeah,
Sansom?
just one final one, and obviously it's on forestry. So you would be aware that council undertakes commercial clearfell forestry in those Maitine Road and water catchments identified on the maps. But there's no reference to forestry at all in the water bylaw that I could see. So I was just wondering, what is the impact of this water bylaw on council's forestry operations?
Thanks, Phil.
Madam Mayor, yes, the bylaw itself is not expressly heading into that other council prerogative of deciding how it runs the forestry activities over all its reserves. This bylaw is trying to really look at the type of activities that might pop up that don't necessarily get council's first overview of it. So we're not seeking to set up an alternative forestry policy through this bylaw.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, I think this bylaw, whilst there are other policies that reference, things like dogs and recreation and that kind of thing, this bylaw has touched on those. So just wondering why it's silent on forestry, given the significant impact that sedimentation and chemical application on those areas, particularly just on the banks of the Maitai Dam, why it's silent on them. It just seems to be a kind of a glaring omission, really.
Thanks, Phil. Anything to comment on there?
Well, Madam Mayor, right up front, council if we look at council's reserves policy plans, it's quite clear that council turns its mind to forestry in those catchments every time a rotation comes to an end. And council, through a separate process, have looked at which parts of those catchments they're prepared to retire from commercial forestry and which parts they just wish to extend for perhaps another rotation, and when they'll review that again. We think that our water supply system at the moment has adapted to council's policies in those areas quite well. So far, nothing that you've done in that policy area has stopped our water supply activity. I didn't feel the need to expressly identify plantation forestry in this bylaw because I think it's working quite well as it is. Thank you.
So just one follow-up then, Phil. So there's no concern at all of sedimentation impact on the dam. I understand the dam's fairly heavily sedimented from that water catchment, and it's not of concern in the water control bylaw, or even into water management.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, council have retired some of what was active forestry on the face of the catchment that fed into the dam, and I was very pleased with that, and so was the caretaker. there are some aspects of the of council activities in there. I wonder, Madam Mayor, shall I let the Chief Executive have his chat there?
Oh, I can't see his hand up. Did Pat have his hand up? Oh, he did. Oh, sorry,
My
Pat.
apologies.
I was looking for the. I'm looking for the reaction one with the hand up, because then you go to the top of my screen. So.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, it was the impromptu wave. So when the Maitai Dam was designed, it was always acknowledged there was quite a high gravel bed load coming down the North Branch. And any time that and so it was designed with surplus capacity at the bottom of the dam, below the level of the bottom intakes, to absorb that gravel bed load from the North Branch. So I don't think, I'm not aware of anything that would suggest that the Maitai Dam is silting up. I think that's a long reach. And I'm not aware of anything that has changed any of those design assumptions. I know that Phil and his team do surveys from time to time of the floor of the lake, and there's nothing there that suggests that those design assumptions are wrong. And in fact, in my memory, the worst incident we have had with silt coming down into the dam was when an area of a hillside slope of pristine native bush gave way and caused us nothing but problems for 2 or 3 years, and was one of the significant triggers that led to the support for the water treatment plant. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Just a follow-up question for this Chief Executive, if that's okay.
Councillor Simpson, I think what I'll do is, can I just come back to you in a minute? I'm going to just move up to Councillor Laurie and Councillor Courtney, just trying to rotate the questions around, and then I'll just, if that's still there and you need to ask a question, I'll come back. So I'll go to Councillor Laurie.
It's just in response to his comment. It would seem unusual to close
Councillor
off
Simpson,
the question.
I'm going to ask if you can, please just thank you very much. That's really don't need to be following up on Zoom like this. Moving on.
So did you just mute me, Madam Mayor?
Sorry?
You just muted me.
Oh, look, I did. Can I do that? I didn't realise I could do that.
Right. Well, you did mute me.
Oh, can I? Okay, unmute. Oh, look. No, I don't know.
Apologies, Mayor. That was actually me. I was hovering over some pictures.
Oh, thank you, Robin. I didn't think I had that power. I don't have. No, thank you very much. There you go, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Laurie, you're next up.
Thank you. I think great questions by Rachel. Appreciate those. Phil, first of all, something you might be interested to know, and other councillors might be interested in this as well. I had a really good chat yesterday to the the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trail Trust, who, as we all know, submitted. Also, Bill Gilbertson came to our last workshop on this and took a great interest in what we were discussing. Councillors and staff, I think, may be interested to know that he thinks the bylaw looks really, really good. They're really pleased, they're happy with the process, and they appreciate that staff have listened to their concerns and made the relevant changes. Yeah, he was 2 big thumbs up. So I just wanted to pass that on. My question for Phil goes back to the Havelock North Campylobacter contamination issue. It is believed the most likely cause of that contamination was sheep feces. Whenever I am up at the dam, which I like to go to ride up to occasionally when the mountain bike trails are too wet, I'm always struck by the amount of sheep feces that are up there. Any comments? Because there are sheep grazing at the dam.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Yes, I do understand we run sheep on the face of the dam. There's one of these tensions that always develops between a reasonable way of maintaining large areas of that grass and the risk that some of that activity might present to us. While the sheep stay on that face of the dam and not on the other side of the water, then the risk is manageable, in my opinion. The intake structure, of course, is on the other side of the fences, and as long as the caretaker keeps the sheep away from that, then that's fine. I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, but I do understand why it's there.
Through the chair, are there any other alternatives that are, not prohibitively expensive?
Madam Mayor, really, for the face of the dam, we don't want deep-rooting material on that. We need something that will hold the face of that dam together, shed water while maintaining the integrity of that face. We could certainly run contractors over it with weed eaters and such like. And if it comes down to that, then we'll look more closely at that into the future. But just at the moment, what we've got does seem to work reasonably well.
Thank you.
Sorry, last question on the subject. Has anyone else expressed concerns or questioned the use of sheep up there?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to say in my memory, I have heard over the years comments made about the use of sheep in that environment. I couldn't tell you who it was that made those comments or even what year, but I do have a memory that it has been raised.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I sort of asked that before, Phil. We didn't have any submissions on sheep?
No, Madam Mayor, no.
Do we have any submissions on forestry?
No, Madam Mayor, except the submission from the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust that talks about ensuring existing activities are able to continue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Phil, for your presentation today. Is this the first time we've updated this particular bylaw, water supply bylaw, since its inception in 2014?
Oh, Madam Mayor, yes. This is these bylaws have been continuous for many, many years. This is just simply the latest update of them.
Where did I get 2014 from, I wonder?
Madam Mayor, that was when the current bylaw was adopted, but there was a bylaw before that and one before that.
Right. Well, thanks for answering that. Are you coordinating and working in tandem with TDC over this particular bylaw? Do you see some merit in that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, yes. This particular bylaw used the Tasman District Council's bylaw as a base document. So effectively the format and some of the wording, some of the pictures were just straight out of their bylaw. But then, of course, our system is slightly different from Tasman's and we had to adapt ours to fit Nelson conditions.
Thank you for that, Phil. Am I right in saying that the main thrust of this updating of the bylaw is around an area that I feel strongly that needs focus put on, and that's protecting our source of water, something the Roding and the Maitai? Is that the main thrust of this bylaw? The emphasis is going on protecting the source of where the water is coming from?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it is one of the primary legs of this particular bylaw.
Good. Well, thank you for that. I've got others, but I think I might stray into perhaps a bill that's before Parliament at the moment, but I don't think I need to go there. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Courtney, I think that's actually a really good point, because I was going to raise it a little bit later. So you'll be talking about the water services bill, presumably.
Yes, I am actually. It's funny you should pick up on that. We're preparing for the possibility of that bill passing at some stage in the not too distant future, and this puts us in a good position for that, doesn't it? Because there's greater emphasis from central government at the moment on protecting water sources around New Zealand. And I'm emphasising water sources because I think we are a little bit we're lacking the degree of protection that I would like to see, quite frankly, around our sources. I know you might have a defence for that, Officer Ruffle, but I think we do, and I do support this bylaw because of that. And I'm thinking around the Maitai and eroding catchments. Any comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, certainly the Water Services Bill, as Ms Murray from the Ministry of Health said this morning, that there is a whole subpart in the new Water Services Bill, Subpart 5, that deals with water source protection and risk management plans. And I'm very hopeful that what we're doing here through Nelson City is going to form a very good basis for council as a water supply authority in this interim years.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Courtney. It was good just to look at the strands of legislation, whether it's LGA bylaws or the Water Services Bill. So this is, well, we could, I think one of the issues here is you could say, well, do we not bother and just wait for the Water Services Bill to be enacted? But I think the work is important anyway. If we go back to it, it's good work to be doing, regardless of the legal mechanism, which will is creating a framework for it.
Thank you.
I'll go up to Chief Executive. He's got his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to come back to Councillor Laurie's comment about Havelock North and sheep feces being the most likely source of the contamination. So Havelock North relied on the fact that they considered that their water supply was a secure groundwater supply and therefore didn't need any treatment. Whereas we are well aware that ours is a surface water supply. And so that was the recommendation that they should have been treating the water. Whereas our water supply catchments, no matter how hard we try, we've got pigs, goats, deer, and possums that are all contributing to the water quality as well, which is why we have an ultrafiltration plant and chlorination. So we try and restrict those numbers, but we're certainly not in the same situation as Havelock North, that's for sure.
Councillor Skinner.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm happy to move the motion we've got, recommendation we've got in front of us for the bylaw. I think it's covered very well, and I'm very impressed with the detail that we've had in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner, and I seconded Councillor Brand. Yes, I think seconding. It's been moved and seconded. Thank you for moving that along. Now, Councillor Sensen, did you have another question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on the CE's comments to just question if what he said was that the Clearfell forestry operations above the dam are not causing any sedimentation or at all of the dam. That's what it sounded like he was saying. I just wanted to clarify that that's the case.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, that's not what I said. There was a suggestion that the Maitai Dam was silting up, and that's what I was responding to. I would expect that commercial forestry does create a small silt discharge, though we do manage that very well in accordance with best practice. What I was talking about was the fact that the major source of the Maitai Dam filling up is designed for, but it's gravel load out of the North Branch. And the worst siltation event we've had was a hillside of native bush giving way and sliding down into the north, into one of the tributaries of the North Branch. That's what I said.
Oh, thank you. And then just a follow-up question: the water filtration treatment that we have, obviously it's taking into account things like the wildlife or the pests and things that are in the in that area. Does it also take out chemicals and that kind of thing? I'm just thinking of I got the forestry management plan from Pierre Folson, and there's about 10 or 12 different notifiable chemicals that are applied to those forests above the water catchment. And I'm just wondering if the water treatment plant, the filters and that kind of thing, are also able to remove those contaminants.
I'm just wondering if we.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Phil.
Madam Mayor, there are two things happening here. Our ultrafiltration plant coagulates out a lot of the dissolved organic materials that are in the water, and with that, some of the chemical that comes in, the nutrients and that come and go with that. We have very rigorous testing of the chemical standards of the raw water source and also the treated water source. And Council maintains really an exceptional quality in its water supply to the city.
Thanks, Phil. All Right, it's been moved and seconded. You've had lots of questions. Anyone needing to debate this one? Councillor O'Neill-Stevens.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I just want to say, firstly, thank you, Phil and David and everyone who's worked on this. Bylaw, I think we've gone through a robust process and through it have successfully managed to balance those considerations of access versus the protection of our water supply, and knowing just how crucial that is to the life of all Nelsonians. I do think that through some of the questioning, we've had some key issues raised around our own management within the catchment, that whilst not best addressed through a bylaw, I think should be a conversation that we continue and a conversation we have further to this, including looking at alternative management within that catchment, especially those the area directly surrounding the dam lake, and just making sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the water that Nelsonians are drinking is as safe as we can possibly make it. So yeah, just a big thank you to everyone who worked on this bylaw, and I hope that we'll be able to continue those conversations separately.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. I just want to, Phil, if there was any safety concern, you would have raised that with us, I presume, or the Chief Executive would do. I just want to be really clear on that point.
Madam Mayor, sorry, Madam Mayor, if I might just have a very quick. Yes, I'm quite confident that we've got a good balance at the moment in terms of how we operate those catchments and activities inside there. I do remain, I guess, cautious and alert to having more intensive use of those areas and risks into the future, but we must just monitor them and deal with them, not try and run from them.
Okay, thank you. No, that was what I took, and what I took from Jane Murray's submission as well in relation to people using the areas. It's about managing those risks, and I think what we've got in this bylaw is very appropriate. Councillor Noonan and then Councillor McGurk, and then I'm going to put the motion, and we're going to vote slightly differently, so I'll come to that in a moment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just thought it was a really interesting process, and the submitters raised some very interesting points. I'm going to have a coughing session. Look, the staff have taken those points on board, and they've addressed them in the report. Sorry. I'll just cut to the chase. I think I just wanted to thank Phil for and his staff for their work, and they obviously are quite passionate about taking care of our water supply, and I just think that's absolutely obvious with his presentation today, and for the thought and care that's gone into this report. So I'm supporting, and now I'm going to disappear. So I do support, but I got.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor McGurk.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. I'll also speak in support of the recommendation that's before us today. I think, again, acknowledging the work that the officers have put into bringing this to us, and recognition of the paramount importance that a safe drinking water supply is to Nelson. Notice that we've introduced a couple of new concepts, as the source protection zones and things like that, which is different from the previous bylaws, and is a recognition of the need to provide a safe water supply. I'm also acknowledge that there is a bit of a balancing interest, and even though it can be difficult, I see that iwi have also their rights have also been acknowledged in the bylaw as well. So it puts us in a good place. There is new legislation coming. I think we're in a good position, is that it's not that much of a step change from what we've got now to what will be coming in the future. So we're well prepared. Thank you very much, and I'll urge others to support it as well.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. I'm now going to put the motion. I'm going to ask if you could just go to use the tick or cross function. So if you could use that, that would be useful, just because it's a bylaw matter. So in your reactions, you see the tick. make sure I've got everybody.
2, 3, 4, 5.
I think that's a
6,
lot.
8.
Yep,
9,
everyone's up.
10, 11.
Okay, that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the next. Let's take you. Move your tick. I think you just have to click on it again. We'll move on to the next item, which is the wastewater bylaw deliberations report. And I'm going to ask the officer, scrolling quickly. I'm getting there. There are no signatures on the end of these reports today. No, so
Mr. Biggs.
Mr. Biggs, thank you, Mr. Biggs.
Madam Mayor.
Warren, welcome to the meeting, Warren. It's nice to see you.
Thank you.
We've got the report. So just, I guess, if there's anything you want to highlight for us as we go before we start questions, you can do that now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora, Madam Mayor, councillors, NCC staff. I will take a few moments to briefly outline how we've got to where we are. Going back a year, September 2020, we went through a workshop where we discussed the detail of the wastewater, or the proposed wastewater bylaw. Following that, in February 2021, we took a report to the Te Auhau Taio Iwi Environmental Forum, where the proposed bylaw was discussed. In February 2021 also, we took a report to the Infrastructure Committee seeking approval to undertake a special constitutive procedure. This approval was given and we undertook the procedure. The outcome of that procedure was 2 submissions. One was from Te Atiawa Manawhenua Ki Te Tauihu Trust, and it was a neutral submission, but it stressed strong alignment with Kaitiakitanga. The other submission was from the Nelson Marlborough District Health Board, and this was in support of the proposed wastewater bylaw. So I guess in summary and to recap, the report in front of you recommends the adoption of the wastewater bylaw. I'm happy to take your questions.
Warren, thank you very much for that introduction to the report. Any questions for Warren?
Madam Mayor, it's relatively carried forward from the last one. I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Seconded by Councillor Skinner. Just make sure, just check for any questions. It's very clear. No questions. Thank you, Warren. It's an excellent piece of work. Thank you for the preparation of this bylaw and moving it through its steps in such an orderly way. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Right, it's been moved and seconded. The same thing. Any debate? No debate. In that case, we're going to do the same thing as last time, just on the reactions. If you could tick across, please. Okay, I think that's everyone done. I was kept looking and waiting for Mr. Levutis to put a tick up, and then I realised that he won't be doing that. But I think it's been moved and seconded, and we voted. It's carried. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best.
Okay. And then I think I can hand the chairing back to Councillor McGurk. Thank you, Councillor McGurk.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Next item, well, it's close to 11 o'clock. Do you want to take a 10-minute break? And we'll do the quarterly report.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, so finish it. It'll come back at 11:05. Welcome back. We're just waiting for everyone to come back online. Just waiting for the last few to come back in. Looks like we've got 1, 2. You all set, Elaine, ready to go?
Good to go, Brian.
Right, okay. We're back live streaming just after a short break. Reconvene the meeting, and the next item on the agenda is the quarterly report. So I'd ask Ms. Plum, Mrs. Parfitt and Mr. Light to join us. And we are at pages, let's have a look, I think 64 of the agenda. Okay, see you there, Ms. Plum. Normally you take the lead on that. You've always got a good story to tell, so.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, I do have a little story. The final quarter of the year continued to be really busy for us, with many projects being finalised through the month. However, we also had quite a bit of rain and storms, so that's actually resulted in a number of projects creeping into this new financial year. And that's showing in item 14. The infrastructure team have delivered a record level of capital works over the year with a total spend of 35 million. If you refer to the report section 20, it actually identifies many of the successes that we've delivered, both by our transportation team, our utilities team, and the capital projects team. I'd also like to acknowledge that the capital projects team also delivered a further $7.5 million of capital works across a number of other groups. So in reality, the total infrastructure output for capital delivery was 41.5 million. We're going to do a presentation. I've created a presentation, but we'll do that at the next infrastructure committee, and that celebrates the successes of the year. Moving forward, the team are looking to have the carry forward projects that did slip into this financial year completed within the quarter. However, with the COVID-19 lockdown, that may affect some of our timelines as well. We're just unsure at this stage. You will note, however, a number of requests for additional funding in this quarterly report. And unfortunately, there's a high potential risk that I'll need to come back for additional funding on upcoming work. We, our consultants, and our contractors are unable to accurately predict costs from one week to the next. The majority of the increase in costs are associated with product supply and delivery delays. We are, however, also seeing resourcing issues and increased resource costs. That seems to be as a result of resources not coming into the country, and it's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul with some of the resourcing that's happening around. We'll also be seeing additional costs coming in for our existing on-site works due to COVID lockdown levels and with potential further product delays. We're running our estimates on known costs with good contingencies, but as per our request this month, it's just unpredictable. As a result of this higher risk associated with budget concerns and requiring agreements for additional funding, there will be a potential project start date delays as well. This may result in failure to deliver what is presently in this year's plan. The risks are being actively managed and monitored, and the team are trying really hard to mitigate as much as we can, working closely with our consultants and contractors and suppliers, but we are struggling. So that's my story. Very positive, and then a little bit not so positive, but we're happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Plum. Yes, good news story, but a sting in the tail. Open for questions. I've got Councillor Edgar, Councillor Courtney, then Councillor Sanson.
Thank you very much. Just a few minor questions, and then I'll get into a more substantive one. So firstly, page 75, 7.8 is mention of the Seymour Ave improvements, and I just want to note that I've received a lot of positive feedback about the work that's been undertaken there, the slower traffic and high and safe use of the widen footpath. The last piece of work that I've been asked about was just in making Seymour Scotland intersection safer for crossing. I'm just wondering if increasing the some yellow lines to increase the sight lines for pedestrians, or if that piece of work is still going to be happening.
Through the chair, I just have to let you know that I missed the first part of that question because I had a computer meltdown, but I think I know what you were asking, as I had seen it in an earlier email. So yes, it's great that you've heard the positive feedback about Seymour Avenue, and we are monitoring that very closely with speed counts. And they show early on a definite reduction in speed and volume through there. We have had some concerns by a couple of residents about the noise from deceleration and acceleration on approach and leaving those speed humps, and we will continue to monitor that and be bringing that back to you as part of our speed management workshop later on. With regard to the Scotland Street Seymour Avenue intersection, we can assess that, and if officers support that, it will come to a hearings panel for implementation of yellow lines as an interim measure for safety. But we do have that intersection on our radar for potentially a larger project, whether it's raised crossing platforms or raising the whole intersection is something that we will be considering.
Thank you. Yes, depending on the time frame of those longer term measures, we may of course need interim ones, but thank you for that. Page 88, 17.16 B cards. Are these going to be, or are they available at wider places, so milk bars, supermarkets, etc., and just also broadening that ability to top up? As a personal statement, I don't like to top up online because it wants to save your credit card details, and I will not save my credit card details into anything. So it actually, I have to go into the customer service centre or the depot to be able to top up. So I'm just wondering if we're looking at expanding the availability and places people can top up.
Through the chair, at the moment, milk bars, dairies are not places where you can top up, and there would be a significant cost to bringing that online, both in hardware and in software licensing. So it's not something we did as part of the introduction of B-Card, but it certainly would be looked at as part of Project Next, which is the national integrated ticketing system that is being worked on at the moment. With regard to the inability to top up under level 3, we are managing that at the moment. We are managing it at the moment, and there are a small number of people who have been affected, and yeah, it's being managed, but it's Yeah, that's right. I'll stop there.
Yep, no, thank you very much. Page 89, 17.20, the parking strategy. Now, of course, we were looking at combining some of that pre-engagement with the proposed expo for Te Ara o Whakatū. So just wondering what you're looking at doing to sort of counteract the absence of some of those pre-engagement activities that you had originally planned.
Thank you. Through the chair. Well, so as the report says, the pre-engagement for the city centre was done with the businesses and property owners back in July. So the city centre, we're quite confident we've got covered. The pre-engagement or the engagement with the Tahunanui and Stoke communities was planned for this week, but obviously has been put off. We will look to be bringing that back either at level 1 or level 2. Level 2, if we can do so safely. There is an online form that has been available throughout all levels, and there are 61 responses to that to date. So we'll get face-to-face engagement as soon as we can. So acknowledging that we don't know when that's going to be, there is a risk that the parking strategy or parts of it could be delayed. I'm confident, excuse me, that we can move on with the city centre aspect of it in line with the city centre spatial plan, because that engagement work has been done quite thoroughly. The other bits may slow things down, and then we'll have to put some thought to how we bring it together toward the end. But there is a risk there that we have to acknowledge.
Thank you. That's great. Page 93, 19.6.3, just talks about the new footpath surface quality measures. And I certainly like the addition of width and cross-wallet driveways. Just wondering about vegetation and cut downs.
Good question. Through the chair. So vegetation is not something that we consider as part of our footpath condition assessment. That work is managed through the NELMAC vegetation control contract. But cut downs or crossing points are certainly part of that shape correction that we have brought into it.
Lovely, thank you. And just finally, last but not least, the unbudgeted additional expenditure. There's, I think I counted 2.1 million of additional unbudgeted expenditure. And I guess I'm quite concerned, certainly not from a budgetary and deliverability perspective. So not, you know, nothing to do with staff, of course, you know, nothing that I feel you could have necessarily, well, nothing I feel you could have been doing differently. We know that this is COVID related. This is, you know, prices going up. It's about supplies. But I just wondering, do we need to be assessing either these current projects that are on today's agenda for, so for example, Washington Valley upgrade. Washington Valley's on our list because of housing priority. Just, you know, there's already an additional 1.38 million requested for stage 1. By the time we get to stages 2 or 3, I've got great concerns this will get significantly larger again. Have we done a, you know, any form of cost benefit analysis projecting forward what additional costs might be there around, you know, is this our best bang for buck for enhancing housing deliverability? And then taking a broader step back, I sent in a proposed resolution which states, request staff to undertake a review of the financial viability and deliverability of the 2021-22 to 2023-24 capital works program due to the impacts of COVID-19 on supplier costs and product delays, and to report back to the next infrastructure committee meeting. As we heard from Lois, there are going to be more requests for additional unbudgeted expenditure. Again, as I note, that is no fault of staff, but I feel we need to probably take a step back instead of reacting to each project. You know, do we need to look at our priorities again? Do we need to look at that deliverability and the financial viability? You're on mute, Alec.
I've just gone off mute, and I was just I was going to take the liberty of answering those questions through the chair, if I may. Is that all right? Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Edgar. Through the chair, I think your resolution that you proposed is entirely fair, and it's something that we, as an infrastructure group, as well as at a senior leadership team, have already considered in terms of evaluating our entire capital works program in terms of the additional costs that we are experiencing and will experience. I think that I'm happy with that recommendation because we've already started that work. I'll just comment on the 3 projects that we have in front of us, if I may, and notwithstanding that we will be undertaking quite a deep dive into looking at the risks and potential additional costs going forward. I do ask that I do reflect on the finances that we're asking on the 3 projects. And I can go into them in detail. Watney Terrace, for example, is a long-standing project that has taken years for David and his team to negotiate easements, and that would certainly open up intensive development and also address stormwater issues in that area. So I do ask, I am asking that that the councillors and committee and council approve the additional funding in light of the fact that we will be doing further work. So for Watney Terrace, it's the culmination of several years worth of work, many changes in residents. So there's a positive outcome. In terms of the Cawthron project, that is absolutely critical for us to be able to allow the other development to open up. And I think that one speaks for itself. Having said that, if I could also just come in there and indicate that we are, and that's covered in the report, we are anticipating some savings on Wakatu storage that could potentially offset the additional costs that we are asking, and that will be realized once we know what those savings are. So this isn't all overall doom and gloom. In terms of Hastings Street, so Hastings Street is part of a multi-year project with regards Washington development. I think that I think there's still a very, very good case to proceed with this work. We really do need to start at the downstream end and work upstream, and this is part of this work that we'll be doing in Hastings is a catalyst for all the additional work. We are quite confident that what we have come up with in terms of what we have presented to you for additional funding represents a technical solution that is definitely workable. We've worked that through with our contractors, and we've come through with a solution that's workable. This work will not only enable intensification, but it also deals with a range of other council priorities, including addressing inflow and infiltration, water losses. It ticks so many boxes. So, as officers, we think that each of these stand on their own merit, and ask that we be allowed to proceed with these. Any delay, of course, will affect our relationship with our contractors as well, who we don't want to move on to other projects, and we have all these contractors lined up. But having said that, we agree with your recommendation, and we had already earmarked that as a piece of work that we need to do and present that back, because as we note in the report, things are literally changing on a week-to-week basis, and we wish we had a crystal ball on this one, but costs are increasing, and we do need to take that breather and just look at the rest of the capital program, and that probably could result in us slowing some works down. These are 3 big pieces of work that we do not suggest that we slow down. Thank you, through the chair.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, just final question. I'll just add for councillors one point of clarification, you'll see the resolution when the resolutions come up, but the financial years I've chosen are the first 3 financial years of the LTP, because of course we do a full review for the LTP. So they're the years I've chosen for the review, just by way of clarification. I was just wondering if Officer Levertis or Parfitt could just comment on housing yield from Washington Valley, because that was considered one of our housing priority areas. And you did talk about, inflow and infiltration and other benefits, but the housing benefits of proceeding with that project just weren't touched on. So I was just wondering if you could just touch on those.
David, are you able to assist?
Hi there, through the chair. So I don't have the yield numbers off the top of my head for what we would be getting from Washington Valley. What I can say is that, as Alec referred to earlier, we do have a water main which goes up that whole road, which is broken many times, and we are very keen. I personally am very keen to get in there and replace it. We also have the big that Washington area is one of our priority catchment areas for inflow and infiltration. So again, we are very keen to get in there and upgrade our systems there. And stormwater wise, the system is simply undersized as well. So this ticks, as Mr. Levertis had referenced, this ticks so many boxes. And on top of that, it's a growth area to boot. So even, it's for me, it's one of our biggest projects we should be focusing on.
Thank you very much. So yeah, so it does tick housing as one of those boxes. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I've got quite a list here. I've got Councillor Courtney, then Councillor Sanson, Councillor Noonan, Councillor Bowater, then there's Will, and then Councillor Fulton in that order. So, Councillor Courtney, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to let Officer Plum off so lightly. I really want more explanation from her about the good news that she shared with us. $41.5 million spent on infrastructure in the middle of the COVID pandemic. And I just want her to tell us more about that, because it is a good news story and she passed over it far too quickly for me. What were the factors that contributed to achieving that result, please?
Thank you, through the chair. I think a number of things. When we went into COVID last time, we were asked to look at how we could stimulate the economy and move things a little faster than we had before. So we changed our procurement approach with some streamlined approach and did a lot of direct engagement for projects under $2 million. That resulted in our contractors being very clear about their forward workload. They were able to recruit, they were able to take on additional resources, they knew what was coming up and what they needed to do. We also opened it up to working directly with contractors that had really only worked directly through large contractors before, and they approached us and said, is it possible to do some direct engagement as well? So we looked at those, looked at their track records, confirmed that they were more than capable of doing what we wanted to do, and engaged them directly. So some of the smaller contractors came on board. They've done an amazing job as well. So we've been very pleased with doing that. The Local Contractors Federation have supported us wholeheartedly, and the contractors have as well. They've absolutely been on board. We've had them working with us earlier in the piece as a result of direct engagement. So we've got better results. We work with them. We've been doing almost open book pricing with them. So we know exactly what we're getting, when we're getting it, and it's just gone really well. So we've been very pleased with that approach. Plus I've had a few more resources come on board, and my team's just pushed really, really hard, and Dave's and Marg's teams have been the same. We've all just been pushing and supported each other and got the job done.
Thank you so much for that extra explanation. And some of this has been able to be carried out primarily because of COVID and different methods of engaging contractors. Would that be right in saying that?
Through the
That we
chair,
wouldn't normally, yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, that would be correct. It certainly sped us along. Prior to this, we would be starting each financial year, getting all our tender documentation done, pulling everything in together, and really not going out to open tender till September, October, November. So we've shortened the timelines, anything from 8 to 12 weeks at times. So our contractors have been able to start earlier because they've got the information earlier, they've seen our drawings earlier, they've been able to price earlier, and that's made a big difference in terms of timing.
Might be, I'll chip in here, just might be helpful if you're Mr. Levert, just do a very sort of snapshot view of how the streamlined procurement system works. Just so it gives an understand to the elected members.
Sure, I can do that. So we have two parts of it. We have projects under 2 million and projects over 2 million. The projects under 2 million are fully identified and shared with the Contractors Federation. We then, the team itself, look and say, who do we believe would be the right person to do this job, the right contracting company? And we identify that across first choice, second choice, third choice. I look at that then and have a look at fairness and see how the allocation has gone across all of our contractors, and if necessarily change things. It's about being equitable. It's about ensuring that one contractor just doesn't have everything because we like working with them, for example, but there's a fairness across. We share that information again with the Contractors Federation. They share it amongst their members. And other contractors, if they're not part of the Fed, we send them that list as well. They have an opportunity to say, we can't do it, the timeline won't work for us, it might not, yes, we're happy. And if another contractor comes back and says, we really would have wanted that job, Lois, is there an opportunity? We will work with two contractors. So we try and do it really fairly across that. Once it's chosen, we then make contact with the contractor, confirm that they are our preferred, they don't have the job at that point in time. We then go through the process of getting them to price the work, their methodology, but we're not asking necessarily for their resources and those sorts of things because we know who they are and how they will do that job. We then check that, do our due diligence on their pricing, have that peer reviewed, ensure that it's meeting what we're expecting it to meet, and then we would confirm the contract with them, and then they move on. For projects over $2 million, we ask who across all their contractors are interested in that job. So we might get 2, we might get 3, we might get 4. And then we notice to all of them, give them some upfront information, meet with them early, go through what we're expecting the project to be. If we've got any drawings, share them. And then we do a closed tender through debts just to those people. So again, they're aware they're not getting something that they haven't seen before, and they're able to price it in a much more efficient manner. We go through full evaluation of all the tenders we receive and then make the decision on those projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for getting Lois to expand further on that. And Lois, what we appreciate as around the table is that above all else, it's job creation, and that's so important, has been so important, and will be going forward because we're still in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. So thank you so much for that. I've got to move to something, and I'll only ask a couple more questions, but just to share. I don't want to take too much time. Officer Parford, I'm looking at page 72 and 6.2.4. And this is something that is really of a concern to me, and I think you'll be all over this as well. I'm confident of that. But the new parking meters, how long have they been in operation?
Through the chair, they came into operation on the 1st of July 2020.
They're showing up some interesting statistics, aren't they? I'm looking here particularly at one that really concerns me, and I'm wondering how you're probably thinking about it already, but could you tell me just 18% of the users of those meters, that represents people that are staying in the city for over an hour. All the rest are within the hour. So when I look at the income that we're getting from the meters, over budget of something like 306, I think it is, thousand, are you exercising your mind on perhaps some method of enticing people to stay in our CBD for longer than 1 hour?
Through the chair, I think this will come up for more discussion when we workshop with you the parking strategy. What the increase in income is really showing us is that prior to these meters, people who chose to park in the inner city squares in particular were rorting the system a little. They were just going out and putting continual free 1 hour vouchers in their window. And the new system doesn't allow them to do that. People get 1 hour free per day. Some people choose to park there all day and pay the $2 an hour. And that's increased our income, and it's also freed up some capacity because those who choose not to pay are parking elsewhere, or we would hope biking or walking or busing into town. The question about it being a deterrent for people coming into town is something we will discuss with you further, but we don't believe that is the case, that our tightening up on our paid parking is not putting people coming off into town to shop.
No, I think I didn't really mean that. I think you've misunderstood what I was meaning. I see an opportunity, a challenge here to entice that 18, to add to that 18%, to grow that 18%, stay for over an hour. Is there some way we can exercise our minds and find a solution to entice those that stay 80% or whatever, stay for only an hour, to stay longer? And I really would like us to exercise our minds on that, Marg, because there is an opportunity there for the CBD, the businesses, and everybody. There is something not quite right there. Do you see the point I'm making?
I do, and I think, Councillor Courtney, it is something we'll flesh out with you in the parking strategy workshop, which is coming up in October.
All right. I think I would have a dozen. I think I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair, and give someone else a chance. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Sanson, then Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Brian, through the chair. I'm not sure who this goes to, but I'm also on page 72, just one up from where Mel was, 6.2.3, just talking about parking regulation income. I'm just wondering if that includes infringement fees from fine tickets that are issued in the neighbourhood streets around the city. And I'm just thinking about this. We had somebody speak in public forum recently on infringement or ticketing in neighbourhood streets, and I'm just wondering if this item here would include that income.
Through the chair, so 6.2.3 parking regulation income, yes, that does include infringements issued by our contractors, EIL, across the network, as opposed to being separate from income from parking meters.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much. And then my next question is page 125. Maitai Dam upgrades. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the installation of the aeration system. Why, I guess, why is there a need to aerate the dam?
Through the chair, I don't mind answering this particular question. So at the moment, the Maitai Dam, we get varying degrees of water quality through the depths. So we get something called stratification that happens. So at the top of the dam, we've got very good water quality, and the further down you go, the dissolved oxygens, for example, will reduce. So through that resource consent process for water abstraction, one of the key requirements is to improve the aeration of the dam so that it's basically got a consistent makeup throughout. So one of the projects we have is working on how to best aerate the dam. So I believe as of March last year, we got through an options report, and we're progressing or investigating 2 options on how to better homogenize the water within the Maitai Dam. And then, of course, what also happens is we discharge water back into what we take from the Maitai South branch. We supplement it with water from the dam, so that it balances out. In fact, we put more water from the dam into the Maitai South branch than what we take. So it's important that we've got the water quality there correct as well. And this comes more at times during droughts, when we have to regulate the water temperatures as well. So it's a pretty cool project. We're using innovative technology, or will be using innovative technology, and it's very interesting to be working on.
Thanks, David. Just a couple of follow-ups. So I guess if we are in a time of drought and the water level decreases, obviously the benefit of aeration is that we've got better water quality, even as the water level in the dam decreases. Is that right? Or
so what we have to do is we so as the temperature increases, so we have to balance off 2 things. The further down you go, there's a big water column that sits in the middle of the reservoir, and it's got numerous intakes, and they're at various depths. So as the water level drops, we can't stop using the top intake. So we had this experience when we had a major drought last year, and 3 years ago, sorry. And we had to start using different intakes because we were getting vortex happening at our top intake because the water level had dropped so much. So it can cause issues because sometimes the better quality water may either be too warm to go back into the river, or it might be too cold, or it has lower dissolved oxygen. So we're just working through to ensure that what we take back and put back into the river is good quality.
Thanks, David. It's really interesting and great to hear that that's being progressed. So it's probably, we don't have time now, but I'd also love to know about Lindavia Intermedia, like where it's come from and that kind of thing. So maybe I can, sometime in an infrastructure workshop, you can update us on that.
Okay.
Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks. Councillor Noonan and then Councillor Bywater.
Thank you, Brian. Look, I sent some questions through last night, so I'm just going to refer to those, and then I've got a couple of extra ones, so hopefully it won't take long. Look, the first question I've got is regarding the wastewater figures, and there's some commentary on income less than budget of 1.175 million, and 321,000 of that is accounted in the commentary, but I just wondered what's the balance made up of, please?
So through the chair, I don't mind answering this one. So the wastewater income, I can confirm. So at the time of writing the report, the wastewater income was 1.175 million behind a budget. It's now sitting at 572,000 behind budget. So there was just a delay in the accounting system of NRSVU being processed, which is referred to. So 6.4.1 and 6.4.2, really, I made a mistake in separating them out, and it should just be combined into one aspect. So the shortfall is with the NRSBU as well. So there's 321 allocated for the commercial trade waste, and there's 288k for the NRSBU, and that's linked with a reduction in interest rates.
Okay, thank you. So does that, now that it's sort of balanced out better, does that go back into the last year? Because this is as at 30th of June. Does that get accounted back in?
Yes, this is last. I probably don't know the details regarding the actual accounting systems, to be honest, but that's how I understand it. Yeah.
Nikki could jump in if that's wrong. So I'm thinking that's probably right.
Oh, these through the chair, these are just draft accounts, and we're continuing to work on adjusting it, and we'll make sure that for next year the version you get, the NRSBU, is pulled through at that point in time.
And then I had just a general one, Brian, through the revaluation of assets and the issues that has caused. And I thought that we had actually addressed that in the long-term plan, but it seems to be really affecting our dollars going into this current year. So if I could have just a little short explanation of how that works.
So through the chair, I'll speak to this one. We have adjusted and accounted for it through the long-term plan, but this is the third year of the previous long-term plan that we're looking at. And by the time the revaluation had come through, which was 30th of June of last year, i.e. 2020, the plan had already been set.
Okay, so it's not going to affect this year that we're currently in then, Nikki? This is just up to the 30th of June?
Yeah, through the chair, yes.
Thank
just
you.
Just to 2021.
That's great. Okay, yeah, because I mean, otherwise we're going to be behind the 8 ball for the whole time. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Look, I was looking at or listening to Judine with her proposed amendment, and I don't know if she's moved the whole thing with that in there, but I'd absolutely support that suggestion. But I'm just wondering, Brian, when we get to when you get to your resolutions, I am really uncomfortable with in particular clause 5. So if you could take them separately, that's the only one I don't support, but if you could take that one separately, that would be helpful. I absolutely support the Deputy Mayor's suggestion that this work is looked at, and I realise that it is that she's asked for it to come back to the next meeting. So whether that 5th clause could be held off for until that next meeting so it can be incorporated into the thinking, then that would be another alternative, but completely your choice on that. I just wanted to let you know I can't support it at this point in time.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I was proposing to do once we got through the questions was putting up the resolutions. But if you want to deal with, we'll deal with the substantive ones first, and then we can take each one of those approvals for the additional funding. I can take those in parts, and we'll just do the tick vote and the cross vote if that's like, and we'll get a decision that way.
Thank you.
And
just a general comment, Brian, that I am concerned that, you know, this is the very beginning. We've just signed out our long-term plan. We probably should have realised that with COVID, the prices, and we could see construction prices were going to rise. So I think a review would be really helpful, because I think Lois said we've signed out 41.5 million last year work. Our long-term plan was looking at about 70, so we're adding another 2. I mean, I just wonder whether it's doable. So I think for that reason, I would sort of support what Judine's going to. Thank you. Yeah,
well, the amendment will be up there in part there, so that's what we'll so you know what you're voting on. Right, Councillor Bywater.
Yes, when you sometimes come along after a few others, they say exactly the same things, but in a different way. I also too have problems with recommendation 5 of the resolution. Would like to ask that to be taken separately. However, I do second what Councillor Edgar has actually put forward, but just not without that recommendation 5. Well, item 5 of the recommendation. Thanks. So I'll wait and see what comes up. And I do have concerns, as has just been said by my fellow councillor, that we're not that far past, and there seems to be a lot to it. So yes, just echoing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, your turn.
Kia ora. Yeah, thank everyone at council for having Chanel and I today. It's really nice. We don't usually get to attend meetings on Zoom during lockdown, so it's really gracious of you all to let us be here. That's great. I've just got a quick question for personal interest around the Ely Street stormwater upgrade. So that is, as far as I can see, a 1 point possibly $37 million investment. I'm just curious about kind of what consultation has been done with the Glen community. A lot of my family lives out there. I'm quite conscious that the Glen community is quite an aging community, and they're quite difficult to get in contact with a lot of the time. Just what active consultation measures have been made around that development, and how has the community been spoken to?
Who wants to answer that? Almost Plum.
I can do that. Thank you, through the chair. There has been a lot of consultation with this, each individual home on Ely Street has had numerous conversations and information as part of looking at what we were doing, and they came back and asked for slightly different in terms of how they want it to look, and because of the rural environment, etc. So they are fully informed and are aware of what we're undertaking and why we're undertaking it.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you very much. That's good to know.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Fulton, then Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Brian. Look, I've got a couple of questions regarding sort of, I guess, waste and climate change. So my first question is page 86 of the agenda, 17.6, that eco-sol litter basket update. It talks about that it says it seems to be working, but it's unclear how effective these devices are. Can someone just expand on that a little bit? Because
what page are you looking at?
Page 86, 17.6.
Hi, through the chair, David will take care of this. I'll speak to this, sorry. So we've got these litter baskets out at 4 locations around the CBD, and we're starting to sample them. And basically it's the first round that this has gone through. So we're only getting a small snapshot. So to really get any full appreciation or understanding, we just need for this to continue for a period of time is really what we're saying. We are seeing some improvements, but it's difficult to really draw conclusions at this stage.
So how will you measure, like, if you have, so are you measuring to see what's collected versus other ones where you presume it's going out?
Yeah, so we're through the chair, correct. So we're looking at what is being collected. So we need to have a bet, and we're also seeing how that interacts with the environment that it's within too.
Okay.
So
it just says initial results show contaminants are being captured. So to me, that seems quite good news.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's great. I just thought unclear how effective these devices are kind of contradicts that a little bit. So hopefully they are working and they start to achieve some of our environmental goals. And I look forward to hearing a bit more about them in the future. My other questions relate to the solid waste minimisation. And I'm just working between notes and computers and phones and stuff, so just bear with me. So 17.8, look, you touched on that a little bit earlier in the meeting about the deconstruction. It looks like there's some funding happening and that's really exciting. Could you just expand a little bit about that? Because I think that's an amazing sort of success story in terms of how we're managing deconstruction waste. And I don't know if that's Marg or who's answering that.
Well, it might be a tag team between Lois and myself, because Lois's capital projects team oversaw the deconstruction of the Mediterranean Food Warehouse, and there is a lot of information on that in terms of cost savings, where material went. There's a PowerPoint presentation on it that we can share if you haven't already seen that. But what we're looking at doing, as I mentioned earlier this morning, is ramping the construction demolition, finding secondary markets for products, ramping that work up. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, put in an expression of interest, which was accepted by the Ministry of the Environment. We've now asked, and we are doing this jointly with Tasman District Council, who've now asked us for an RFI with more detail as to what that would look like. And it's a significant amount of funding that could come our way so that we can do more of that work and more engagement with the building and construction sector, such as, in fact, we had a builder's breakfast planned. It has been deferred now due to COVID-19 restrictions, but we really want to engage with that sector going forward about secondary markets and repurposing materials. So that's about as much as I can say. We'll bring you more information as we have it.
Okay, in terms of that connecting into the Nelson plan, is it possible to wrap any regulation around sort of an expectation that deconstruction will happen into the future rather than recyclable waste being sent to landfill? Like, have you had a conversation with Maxine and her team and looked at the Nelson plan and how that might shape sort of resource consents for demolition into the future?
I haven't had that conversation with Maxine's team. I'd have to go back to them and just see what their thinking on that is at the moment.
I think that would be really helpful because it's quite a big environmental issue, and I think that there's probably an opportunity. I'm sure people have to apply for a resource consent to demolish, so how we can shape that into the future, plus perhaps the role of the urban design panel to ensure that if buildings are being demolished, that they're done in a way which is minimising waste as much as possible. So I think that's a sort of cross-department conversation to have. Thank you, Mark. Moving on, I've got a question around 17.12, which is the kitchen waste trial. It sounds like it's going really well. And I'm just curious in terms of sort of waste diversion and whether there's been some calculations of how much, sort of how many tonnes of, I know it was in the paper, but I would have thought that would come through in the reports a little bit more, how much, how many tonnes of CO2 we've diverted as a result of that, or methane gas as well. So do we have some calculations on that?
Chair, I'm sure we do, but I don't have them with me at the moment.
Okay.
Just while you're thinking of your next question here, I understand that some councillors have got a meeting with a Zoom meeting with the DHB at 12 noon, re the COVID and vaccinations and things like that. Is it just an indication who needs to attend? Because I'd really like to get this item sort of sorted out before we take a break. No one needs to go to that meeting? Oh, well, we'll carry on.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Okay, so moving forward in terms of the quarterly reports with sort of, if we're casting a climate change lens over all of the work that we would do, would we expect to start to see some of that data coming through the quarterly reports, Margaret, or is that going to be reported to the Climate and Environment Committee in terms of sort of savings and in terms of emissions reduction, you know, actually quantifiable amounts?
I think Mr. Labutis is indicating he will answer that.
Through the chair, I expect there will be some reporting through the Environment and Climate Committee in terms of a whole range of climate initiatives. That's where I'm anticipating it will be reported through.
Okay, so it's not going to come through these reports, it's going to come through a separate report. I just think it's important now that we're doing the work, we report the success of that work. Moving on to the next section, which is 17.13 and the recycling, it talks about how we've got some pretty good success happening with 1s, 2s and 5s, very little contamination, and that at the moment that plastic's being recycled in New Zealand. Can you tell me what it's being used for in New Zealand, like what kind of recycled materials we're producing here? And then it mentions that it might have to go overseas. What will it be used for overseas, and what's the carbon footprint in terms of exporting overseas, plastics overseas?
Through the chair, so I don't have the answers to what it's being recycled into or turned into. I expect that we are it's going into plastic chipping, but I don't have that level of detail with me at the moment. And at the moment, we aren't sending anything overseas. But remember, Nelson City Council doesn't own this. We collect it, goes, NELMAC provide it to Smart Environmental, it goes off to Busy. So we are just the collection agency in this. So what I can assure you of, though, is since we changed to just collecting 1, 2 and 5, we are now much better with regard to reduced contamination, and anything that does get exported in the future, pending New Zealand capacity to process it, is being exported in a very pure form. So we're no longer exporting bales of mixed plastic. It's either bales of plastic 1, plastic 2 or plastic 5, and it's going to reputable processing companies as per the base sale agreement. But we're not there yet. We're not exporting anything at this stage.
So I have asked about this before. Could I please find out what the 1s, 2s and 5s are being used in New Zealand, what they're being turned into and used in New Zealand. And if they do go overseas, what they'll be being turned into overseas and what countries they'll be going to. I think it's really important we know what the end product is of our recycled plastics.
Certainly, through the chair, we'll endeavour to find that information out for you.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
I'll reiterate that we do not export anything overseas.
Through the chair, that's the point I wanted to make. And I do think that I covered this in detail in my previous report to the committee when we made the decision as to what plastics we were and weren't going to collect. I'll dig up that report. I think from memory, I covered in terms of which suppliers we were actually sending material to and what those were used for. And but I just wanted to reiterate that we are not sending stuff overseas.
Yes, but I would like to know what it's being used for, because I have asked for that before, and I don't think we can actually necessarily use all those products in New Zealand. But I'm sure you're right, Alec, and I'm looking for, apart from the meat trays, I'm curious to know what else we're turning our plastics into here. Maybe it's being used in roading, which would be really exciting to hear about. So let's find out what it's being used for in New Zealand. If it's being recycled in New Zealand, we must be able to get that information. My next question is around the 19.7, so the KPIs, which is, sorry, I haven't got the page. 19.7 is page 93. No, 94, sorry. It said 2 of the 3 solid waste measures were achieved relating to e-waste and composting. 1 measure was not achieved relating to volumes of waste to landfill. Can you just expand on why that's not being achieved? Is that part of our 10%, aiming for 10% reduction to landfill, and how much have we gone over it? So when I read that, it sounds like we've increased our waste to landfill rather than reduced our waste to landfill. I'd just like to have that explained to me.
Through the chair, yes, that is the case. Our landfill per person has gone up, and the quantities I think are in the table. But it's a national trend. It's we think because this is a little anecdotal, but the theory is that people who have disposable income to otherwise travel overseas for a holiday can't do that. So there is more building and renovating happening within New Zealand than in the past. And the construction and demolition waste as a result of that is what has tipped us over. We're looking for a downward trend in quantities, and that's what hasn't been achieved. So it's not tied strictly to the 10%. We're looking for a reduction on the previous year, and that didn't happen. COVID has skewed data nationwide.
Okay. Thank you. That's really helpful. So I guess getting this grant for construction and demolition waste is really helpful in terms of trying to address that massive increase in demolition waste, which is now going to landfill. And I imagine there's probably something to do with the fact that we're, as government and local government, investing a whole lot in infrastructure projects as well, maybe, I don't know. But I think it is an important thing for us to be looking at moving forward. Okay, and finally, just going back to my questions around sort of climate impact, at the end of the report, in the important considerations for decision making, the climate impact just talks about the upgrade to enable, the primary driver for this upgrade is to enable future development within the surrounding area. I would have thought that climate impact section would have had quite a lot of detail in terms of emissions reduction as well. So in future, could we ensure that that's somewhat more detailed in terms of addressing issues through the quarterly report? Or is there a reason why it's just touched on that? Page 99 of the agenda it is.
Through the chair, I'll attempt to answer that. So the impact of the supporting information relates specifically to the additional monies that we require for the projects. So that's why we've addressed that specifically. in terms of, and the reasons that we've given in the supporting information, we believe will go away to addressing that issue. I'm not too sure we could have addressed Councillor Fulton's question in that box with relation to the additional money for those projects. I think that's a bigger question that she's asking.
No, I think so. So what you're saying is the important considerations for decision making. You're just referring to the financials, whereas I thought that section would consider the entire quarterly report as we're making a decision on whether we receive the quarterly report or not.
Through the chair, I can probably answer that. Kate, we only do the important considerations for decision making in the quarterly report if we're requesting funding. So it is associated with the funding.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So that's really great to clarify. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Laurie, your turn.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everyone. I too would like to know what our recycled plastic produces. So it's not just Kate, and I'm sure others want to know that as well. Going to page 86, also picking up on the ESOL litter basket update. My understanding is that trial started in January 2020. So I'm a little bit surprised that I know there's been a lot on, but I'm still surprised we don't have more information about what we're learning from them. But I've also got a question about why we need that level of detail, given that they're being used in other centres, and I'm sure I'd be surprised if they were much different, very different from what we have. Would the staff like to comment?
So through the chair, I'll respond to this one. So if you recall, in the various updates we've given about this, when we were about to start the trial, COVID came in, so we had to abandon the trial, and then we noted that we were then experiencing issues when it came to seasonal changes and things at that time as well. So the trial basically restarted earlier, in the last financial year. So that's the reason why there's been a time lapse between that, and we had previously updated, I believe yourself on that. With regards to the other data, look, I don't have those specifics to hand, and I'm happy to get back to you directly about those certain aspects, Matt, about the historic data. The information that we've taken to date suggests that we need to collect more data to really work out the effectiveness of them, and obviously in how they apply to each specific site.
Through the chair, is it about their effectiveness, or is it about where we can most effectively use them, given that other centres use them?
Probably yes. Where are they best placed to be used? So we have got four sites with 4 different environments, and it's working out how effective they are in those environments.
Okay, thanks, David. Page 88, Transport 17.15. Talks about more work being done at night, which I think is fabulous. I would just like to make the point that I just hope that the contractors continue to think about the safety and needs of cyclists when they're working at night. People do get around occasionally on their bikes at night, but also just a personal experience. I buckled a wheel on a bit of roadworks in Vanguard Street recently because of the very sharp edge of where the concrete had been cut away, and then there was sand, sort of gravel, and it was a big dip. And I just, every chance I get to remind staff about those sorts of issues and the safety of cyclists, I'm going to go for it. So that's what I'm doing right now. Hope that can be taken on board. Page 89, 17.19, the Innovative Streets Nelson South project. Fantastic news about the dropping speeds. A 50% reduction, a 30% reduction in speeds on Tapahi Street is fantastic. But this 50% reduction in volume, does that suggest that the traffic's just going down other streets, other residential streets?
Through the chair, possibly. I mean, traffic, you could say it's a bit like water. It needs to go somewhere. Our hope would be that it's staying on the right road, which would be Waimea Road. And we have got monitoring around surrounding areas, and you'll know that there's a knock-on effect. We know that from the Hampden Street closure. So we monitor it. but the intention is that we've got less traffic going where it shouldn't be, which is in a residential area that we're focusing on, and particularly importantly near a school and a kindergarten.
Great stuff. Through the chair, have we had any reports of or complaints about increased rat running in other streets around the area where we're doing the trial?
Through the chair, no, not specifically around Nelson South, no.
Great, good news. Thanks. Just a bit of feedback on 17.22.4. I got a lot of great feedback from people about the bike light stops, people thinking they're fantastic. They were worried they were being stopped by the police for being naughty when they didn't think they were being naughty, and they ended up having a great chat and riding off with a bike light. So people really like those that initiative. On page 108, we're looking at Kanini Street, and I just remember when the local community came in to talk to council about their concerns about speeds down Kanini Street. Anyone who's been down there knows that cars go down there too fast, and it's great to see that a lot of the work in terms of the upgrade has been done, but it says the transport upgrade is currently in consultation and design phase will be with construction planned in 2023-24. It seems like quite a long gap between the community coming to us expressing their concerns and us doing something about that those design issues. Are there any temporary measures we can put in place between now and then that will help to reduce the speeds in Kanini Street?
Through the chair, we could include it as a trial site as part of our speed reduction. We've got a number of sites that we're trialling. I think I referenced them in the report. Kanini Street could be included in that, but it has gone very quiet up there. It's a very self-explaining road as it is. It's narrow, and I would say the vast majority of drivers drive it at a safe and appropriate speed. And it's not a strong through route such as some of the other sites where we've put in temporary speed humps as a trial. And of course, the long-term intention is that we make it even more self-explaining, but we'll be following on behind utilities and doing the surface treatment at that time.
Okay.
I don't think there's a call at the moment for anything temporary.
Okay.
As an interim.
I think I might get in touch with the submitters from a couple of years ago about that, just to touch base with them and see how they're feeling about that, and I can feedback to you if you like.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. No other questions. Just ask if we can put up the resolution or the recommendations. And on the share screen. Thanks, Robin. Really, the only amendment changes paragraph 6 from the recommendations, which were out in the agenda. So I have someone to move. I've got Councillor O'Neill Stevens. You moving or question?
Question. Just around clause 6. Just wondering if officers can speak to sort of expected workload. I know that our next infrastructure committee meeting is, I think, the 28th of October, just whether completing a review of the financial viability and deliverability of the capital works program in that time frame will be achievable, and if there'll be any other work that ends up getting bumped, just knowing that currently the whole team's flat tack.
Ms. Levitt, you able to answer?
I saw, I was probably thinking Lois's finger was hovering over the mouse. Look, I think anything that gets added to our work program at the moment is going to add to our overall workload. And I appreciate the question, Councillor. I think it is something we're going to have to do. I was thinking very, very hard whether we actually can get that in front of council within the next 6 weeks. which means we actually have to have all that work done within 4 weeks, because our agenda turnarounds and getting it out means we have to have a first draft done within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it will be tight. I'm unsure whether anything can drop off at the moment. As with everything, the same staff that are required to do this are the same staff that are doing absolutely everything else. It will be tight. I can only, I think this work needs to happen, and all I can say is I will have do our best intentions to get in front of the infrastructure committee in 6 weeks' time. It will be tight, make absolutely no mistake.
I guess I'd be interested to hear from the mover around that is whether or not that, you know, I think it's an important bit of work, but just whether or not we can give a little bit more breathing room to the team on this one.
Through the chair, if I'm allowed to respond.
Yes.
Yeah, I personally think it's still good to at least have the intention for the next infrastructure committee meeting. I would be happy if they came back at the next one and they said, look, we've been able to do the first year or the first 18 months, because any delays to this also then has the potential impact to delay other projects going ahead. So you do have that chicken and egg scenario. We need projects to continue to move at pace. And so any delays to this work has the potential to delay those as well. So I think the intention for the next infrastructure committee meeting actually should stay.
All right, heard from the proposer. Hasn't been moved yet. Okay, Your Worship, Madam Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, apologies, I was obviously away for some of the discussion on the quarterly report. And so if these questions have already been answered, then just let me know. I just want to go to that Hastings Street project, and I'm seeing, I thank you for the detail on that and what's causing the increases. One of the issues that has been raised with me is whether we can do this more cost effectively by actually using the reserve and coming through the reserve. And I just want to ask officers around that matter. I'd had some other feedback to say that there was not a desirability, that wasn't seen as desirable because it may need Minister of Conservation approvals or something to that regard. Are you able to, someone able to speak to that, or just if no one knows anything about that, I'll bring it to you offline. But was there consideration of coming through the reserve?
Through the chair, my understanding is yes, there was, but I can't give you a definitive answer as to why that wasn't a good solution. We had looked at various places across the road, and with the large trees there as well. There has been a lot of work about where the best location would be, but I can't tell you about the reserve itself.
Through the chair, I can. I have a little bit of information on this. So there's a number of heritage trees that are through the reserve, and we would have had to have protected their roots, and we were looking at a combination of mold tunneling, and to be honest, that would have the price difference between the mold tunneling to protect the trees and go through a reserve are very, very much the same in terms of doing an open trench. And there were synergies with the open trenching because we can relocate the water, put the stormwater and all services in one. So there was serious consideration given to going through the reserves. Yes.
Thanks, Alec. Are there any issues that require approval processes for installing, or I mean, do you need easements or other things if you're using land that is classified by a reserve? I just wonder, actually it's made me sort of question as to whether we've got a system that needs improving to help deliver infrastructure in an affordable way. And I would have thought that having to get ministerial approvals on putting in 3 waters infrastructure isn't the smartest way to operate if that's the case.
So through the chair, I agree with Her Worship. I think certainly streamlined processes would certainly assist us. And if we were going down that route, then we would have required an easement and we would have had to go through a special process. But as it worked out, what we are proposing technically is a far better solution than the reserve option for a variety of reasons, not just the fact that it would have taken us a little bit more time.
Okay, thank you. Look, Mr. Chair, I'll take that other issue offline because I'll just add it to my list of things that could be improved in terms of supporting good quality infrastructure delivery in a efficient way. Last question is on Hastings Street. So I presume that one is of a scale. It'll come back to the tenders subcommittee as well. Just confirmation on that one. Is it threshold?
Through the chair, yes, it is. It's booked in September, all going well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks. Okay, that's all the questions. We've got the recommendations. Someone to move. Thanks, Councillor Edgar. Someone to second. Councillor Rainey. There's been a request that we deal with them in parts, so we'll deal with that. So if we can put them up. And we'll do what we did the last time with the bylaw. Those we'll deal with paragraph 1, that we received the report. Those in favour, just press the green tick.
I can't see it. I can't read it. It's as per the agenda, apart from 5.
It is actually as per the agenda. We're just dealing with the first one that we received the report.
So the one that, just for clarity, Brian, the one that was indicated I wouldn't support is now number what? I can't. It's too small.
It's still number 4. That'll be number 5.
Number 5 still? Okay.
Yeah, numbers are a bit out of sync. So number 5.
Thank you for that. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
So
we're just dealing with number 1, the received report.
I'm happy if you do clause 5 separately and then do the whole lot together. That's the only one I had an issue with.
Yeah, there's others. Others may have a different view. So
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Right, just have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's right. That's carried. Anyone against? I better check. No. We'll deal with number 2. That approves the changes to the Ely Street stormwater upgrade, allowing for construction. So that's the Ely Street project. The one out at Cable Bay, same thing. Just green tick if you're in favour. I'm just looking at all at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's passed. Everyone's voted in favour. None against. Number 3, the Wozni Street upgrade, stormwater upgrade. That's the one out at Utterfy. Same thing, those if you just leave the green tick on if you're in favour. So 1, let's have a look. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, also carried. Anyone against? None against. Right, number 4 is the Science and Technology Precinct. That's as per the agenda. Additional capital funding for the stormwater reticulation at the Science and Technology Precinct. So those in favour, just leave your ticks on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, carried unanimously. There was none against. Right, here we go. Paragraph number 5, which is approves the unbudgeted capital funding for 1.3 million for stage 1 of Washington Valley and 2.4 for the following year for stages 2 and 3. So this is basically the Hastings Street upgrade and Washington Valley upgrade. Same thing, those in favour, leave a tick, those against, cross. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, It looks like it's carried 11 for, 2 against. So that is carried by a majority. The next one is the additional one that's been proposed by Councillor Edgar, that the staff undertake a review of the viable and deliverability of the capital works projects over the next couple of years, starting 2021, 22, 23, 23, 24, due to the COVID-19, and reporting back to the next infrastructure committee. Those in favour, just leave the room.
Are we able to debate that one?
Yeah, you can. If you wish.
Now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Look, I just think this is a very good addition and well thought through from the Deputy Mayor. Looking at the work program, it's quite frightening that the costs are just going so quickly, so early in the year. And I think that it's important that we actually have some priority setting from direction from the staff so that we can make decisions. It may be that we can't deliver. We're now looking at $72 million of work this year, and I just don't know that it's possible to do that. So I think it's important that this piece of work is done, and that's why I'm supporting this particular amendment. Thank you.
Right, yeah, I should have actually asked for any comment or debate, but I've got Councillor, Your Worship the Mayor, and then Councillor Courtney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I want to support this additional clause, and I just want to acknowledge that the officers are using their absolute best endeavours along with the contractors to try and keep this work moving along, but the issues with supply chain are quite significant. We are seeing shortages of things that you would consider just, you know, a given various nail sizes and all sorts of things that just can't be obtained. One thing that I think is, I just also want to note there that this will be impacting quite a bit of work, and to the point where we may have some work where we're trying to do not just new work, but renewals work, and some may even be focused around compliance matters. And in my call yesterday with Project Cookery, that was one of the issues that's being felt by other organisations as well, as they just cannot get what they need to do to keep on top of some of the compliance issues. That was in relation to the residential tenancy sort of matters around warmer homes. So we may find that that's the same thing across the board for us as well. But I appreciate that it is a piece of work that needs doing. I know the Chief Executive is already starting the thinking around that, and appreciate that it may take a couple of cycles to get something through. The first one may be better to be a bit of a workshop session, just so we can have a chat around priorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I raised this during the long-term plan debate and questioned officers about their ability to carry this through, and they assured me that they were capable, and actually they've approved that. They have actually proved that by the workload that they got through this financial year, finishing June. And I was assured that it was achievable. It was bold. I think they put that word in just to please me or satisfy me, but it was achievable. Look, we can't, look, I would sooner see savings in some other area, because quite frankly, we must not forget we're in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. We're still there. And this is job creation, and this is what we need, and we've proven that before in other years and decades ago, that when we get into a situation, we put emphasis on job creation, and that's what this council has done up to this point. These are basic services that the community expect us to provide, and I don't think we should falter at the line now. So I'm going to say that I would far sooner go on ahead and make our savings if we need to elsewhere.
Okay. Councillor Edgar, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'll do write a reply if everyone else is finished.
I don't have anyone else wishes to indicate they wish to speak, so you have the right to reply.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to do this piece of work, and look, similarly, we might need to do this in other areas of our capital works program. Our operational works can't be reviewed through till next annual plan, And based on some of the price increases we've seen, 15%, 25% in areas, as was outlined in the report, this has the potential to turn a $71 million capital works program into something 80 million or more. But we also need to focus on what we can deliver. And so if the delays in products mean we are going to have trouble delivering projects, then some may need to be moved forward, some may need to be moved back. There's quite a few consequences, and they're not just all financial ones, as a result of these impacts that we're seeing from COVID-19. So I think this is an important piece of work to enable us to deliver and to deliver well to the community. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, I'll put the final resolution, which is number 6. Same thing. If you just indicate with a green tick or a red cross. Those in favour will put a green tick. Those against a red cross. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm counting 11 for and 1 against. Anyone voted? Is it one on the
2 against?
Oh, right. Is that you, Councillor Skinner? Oh, yeah, there we are. 11 for, 2 against. It is carried. Thank you very much. Just in conclusion, just with the quarterly report, just draw everyone's attention back to paragraph 20. There's quite a list of achievements by the infrastructure team over the last 12 months under what was trying circumstances, and I commend, as I said in my chair's report, the work of the infrastructure team delivering such a wide range of projects in what are difficult circumstances. So thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is public excluded. So could I have someone to move that we move into public excluded? Thanks, Councillor Noonan. Seconded, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. Those in favour say aye or indicate. Okay, we're now in public excluded. And now is also a good time to have a break.